15:39 to go, third period. Strome stumbled. They battle. Fowler, the puck in front. It's there. Looking for it is Shan. The time goes off. No goal. The Blues win it. Bring out the Zamboni with the puck on the doorstep. The Blues kept it out and skate to a 4-3 win. Edmondson into traffic. Shot blocked in front by Falk. And the horn sounds. The Blues have earned a point in overtime.
Wow.
What a point earned. A gut check game all around for the Blues. And Hofer just backstopped them to one of the hardest road points of the year.
Down 1-0, playing against the best team at home in the NHL. We come back and we tie it and we get to overtime. Too bad we didn't get the 2 points. But, I mean, the block shots, the sacrificing for each other, the screen by Bolduc on the Leddy goal, I mean, that's winning hockey. And we just keep playing like this. We'll keep getting good results.
That was Jim Montgomery over the weekend with Alex and T-Bone on BK. The game against the Kings told us everything we need to know about where this team's at right now, man. You're without Colton Parayko. You're without Cam Fowler. You're everybody on the team. I think it's 14 of the players on the roster ended that game with a blocked shot in one way or another. And T-Bone, we'll get this quote queued up here in just a moment. Joel Hofer, after the game, had the quote of the night talking about what it takes for guys to go out there and sacrifice like that. Take a listen to this.
You know, it's easy for me. I have all the padding. Those guys don't have any padding. So, yeah, they got, big balls there. And, lots of kudos to them.
Dude, it was great.
Nailed it.
You got 1 point. You didn't get the full 2. And in overtime, man, that's a moment that Dylan Holloway is gonna want to forget very quickly. But, dude, this team, the way they're playing right now, I know they didn't end up finding a way to win that game overall. But Army said it over the weekend. This can be a successful season regardless of what the end result is with the playoffs, win-loss record, whatever. If they keep playing like this, we're all going to be pretty damn impressed by what they were able to do this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tweeted this out at the end of that game because there were some people that were bummed out because of how overtime went. And frankly, you could tell by Dylan Holloway's body language, that dude was gassed from what they had done. The Blues wrapped up a stretch of playing 9 games in 15 days. They played 3 sets of back-to-back. 2 of those 3 included travel. They played 3 sets of 3 games in 4 days. And of the teams that they played, 7 of them were sitting in a top 3 spot in one of their divisions, and the Blues took points in 8 of those 9 games. Like, everything that they just went through was what you absolutely needed if you wanted to keep these playoff hopes alive. And now, which seems crazy to say, the schedule actually opens up a little bit for the Blues.
Totally.
They get 4 days off before they play Pittsburgh, and then I think of the rest of the games they play in March, there are 2 teams that sit in the current playoff spot. So for the Blues, they just got through the gauntlet. And that LA Kings game, to me, BK, that told me everything I needed to know about the Blues. You lose Parayko, you lose Fowler as he got home for the birth of his baby boy, which congrats to them. But that wasn't the prettiest game. Frankly, it got ugly at times. But they took away the skill part and said, we're not going to have that tonight, but you know what we will have? We'll have the bigger passion than the other side. They out-hit the LA Kings. They had more blocked shots than the LA Kings. I think, like you mentioned, almost every single player, with the exception of like 3, did not have a blocked shot in that Kings game. That's the type of mentality that is going to at least push you towards a playoff spot at the end of the season. Because if you're willing to work like that on the second of a back-to-back of a game that started 2 hours earlier with travel involved, yeah, I think the Blues are fully committed to what it's going to take to win hockey games. And this is a massive development for a team that for 3 years, I think we continuously asked, will this team ever figure it out?
Yeah, I looked this up over the weekend, Alex, because it's what you're saying speaks to where they're at right now. They've changed the way that they're playing. That Four Nations face-off, I remember Bennington came back and he was like, I feel like I missed something. Was there like a big team meeting that I wasn't a part of because this looks different? And sometimes you see quotes like that and they just roll off your back because a week later they're playing like crap again. That happens all the time, right? That wasn't the case here. Something did dramatically shift in the style of hockey that the Blues have been playing since that Four Nations face-off, and it's hard not to see, oh, that was the first extended stretch where Jim Montgomery got to, run practices with the team. And since then, they have allowed the 3rd fewest shots per game, the 4th fewest scoring chances per game, the 2nd fewest high danger chances per game, and they have the 9th best save percentage in the NHL. Those are all at 5-on-5, those numbers that I just gave you. They have shifted to, this is Jim Montgomery's team now. We said, was it Ben Bishop that told us this, Alex? He joined us right after Jim Montgomery was hired and said, hey, guys, listen, it's not going to be necessarily about like this high-flying offense. Jim Montgomery is going to take away the high-danger chances. You're not going to see rush chances against, and that high-danger area, good luck. Good luck getting to it against a Jim Montgomery team. That happened to a degree early on, but then they kind of went away from it, and you saw it fall to the side. And now they're getting back to it. They are returning to their roots of who they're going to be under Jim Montgomery. And that doesn't matter, apparently, if it's Colton Parayko or Cam Fowler or Justin Falk. Doesn't matter who's on the ice. There is a structure that is in place, and that allows you a little bit more wiggle room than what you have to be if it's all about speed and skill at all times. If you are completely reliant on speed and skill, when your top guys are out, there's no way to replicate that. You cannot get the same speed and skill out of your 16th forward as you can out of Jordan Kyrou. It's just not possible. So when you have the structure to lean back on, it's not going to look great every night. But you can find a way to earn a point against the LA Kings on the road in the second game of a back-to-back when you've been playing 100 games in 12 days, basically. You can find a way to do that when this is what you can lean on. So it changes everything about not just where they're at right now, but more importantly, what they can be when this thing is fully formed. That's what I think is really fun to watch right now, Alex. It allows you to dream on what the Blues can be when Monty's vision matches the talent on the ice that we know is coming sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and they've all bought into it. Like, this is what Doug Armstrong said during the media availability after the trade deadline. He's like, this last 17, 18-game stretch, you're going to really find out who's committed to winning, who's going to block the shot that they don't need to block, who's going to be the guy that absorbs the hit so that he makes the play. Because they've been doing that for now 9 consecutive games to where you've never seen a spurt where it's like, oh, they've gone back to that ugly style of hockey they've played. And to the point you made of the Jim Montgomery structure, this is what the Blues did when Ken Hitchcock took over. When Ken Hitchcock stepped in 2011, 2012, he brought a system that told the Blues, look, it might be boring at times, but I promise you it's going to win. And they did not have the offense in Ken Hitchcock's first year. I think they were bottom 5 in the NHL that season in goals for per game. But he had a structure of defensive play in place that he said, if you stick to this, the offense will come. And then following the next 2 years, the Blues were some of the top teams in their division. And then they drafted Tarasenko. And then they drafted Jaden Schwartz. And then the offense started to show up. But the team already had a structure that those guys were just plopped into place. Those guys were plopped into a system that says we play efficient, forechecking, physical brand of hockey. We're going to be a stingy team defensively, and the offense will come. When you get the offense, everything else seems easier.
And that is what makes this enjoyable for me as we're looking at Monty's vision. It was that first period against the Kings when I was like, okay, I'm fully on board with what Monty is trying to build here. And I know it got away from him. If I'm being honest, I think they were tired. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Fifth game in like 8 days, another back-to-back. For me, it's the fact that they are the aggressors, it feels like right now. It doesn't feel like, remember, I think it was the last year of Berube when it was, hey, we're going to change, we're going to go to this kind of zone defense. Yeah. And we watched them play, and it was, all right, so what you really meant was we're going to just try and block everything and not have any offense. We're not going to be the aggressors. We're just going to take our punches, and hopefully maybe we block a shot and go on a breakaway to win the hockey game. That was how it was in the final year of Berube. This is different because it's not just sound defensively. They are the aggressors. They are the ones that are bringing the physicality. They are the ones that are getting the puck in deep and getting in on the forecheck, which makes this feel sustainable. And I'm with you guys. This is the first time this year that I've felt confident in what the vision is for the St. Louis Blues moving forward. As this season was going on, no offense, Bannister, during Bannister, and then early on under Montgomery, I didn't see where they were going. I still thought they were like 3, 4, 5 years away. And they may end up ultimately being that far away from getting to where they want to be. But I can now see how this is starting to piece itself together. They may or may not make the playoffs this year, but I definitely feel better about the way that this Blues team is being built for the long run.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. The YouTube chat is available for you guys at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. We'll get to a couple of these texts first before we talk about the Cardinals in the next segment. From the 314, did you guys hear that Nick Leddy compared the current feeling with the Blues to his Chicago days postgame? I did see that quote. Thought that was really interesting, and he wasn't the only one that was talking about it that way. When you start to hear these kinds of quotes, it really makes me believe Letty mentioned, hey, the last time that I felt like this was when I was in Chicago. That's the only thing that was reminiscent of it. Braden Shin was talking about how they're getting the culture back. This is what he felt early on in his Blues career, and now it's getting back. We'll have that quote for you. We got it from Jeremy Rutherford coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. But that's the kind of stuff that really gets you excited as a Blues fan, is when the play on the ice is matching the quotes that you're hearing post-game, and none of it feels forced. It's all just, okay, this is all real. It feels to me like it did in 2022 in that regard. Like 2022 was just a really good hockey team. They figured it out down the stretch, and they got things going. So if they don't lose Jordan Bennington, they probably end up winning a playoff series.
Yeah. Well, let's not bring that. Let's not bring that to the table right now. But
Seriously, you BKO.
The difference,
Somebody
I guess.
said, shut up, BK. Stop believing this.
I mean, that's true. The difference with this one, though, versus that 22, like all of the numbers were like, they can't sustain this. I actually believe this team can sustain this type of play.
Did you see what Money Puck had them at?
Yeah.
Money Puck over the weekend put out their updated power rankings, or excuse me, Puckpedia maybe it was, and they had them at 12th on their list.
Yeah.
12th overall.
Yeah, it's gonna.
The nerds don't hate the Blues anymore.
I'm telling you, man. Like this is why like the Parayko news was devastating, but the offense never changed. You still had the four lines that have been rolling pretty well, and the goaltending has been good. And that was a really big game for Joel Hofer. I mean, we talked about it on pregame with Curbs. Like that was probably the biggest game of Joel Hofer's career because he understands the position that the Blues are in right now. And I don't know how much you're going to see Bennington down the stretch, probably a lot. Yeah. But fatigue's going to set in at some point for him because he's played a lot of hockey with that Four Nations tournament. You're going to need Joel Hofer to come up with some big games for you as well. So the analytics are picking the Blues right now because everything is clicking for them. Unlike teams like Calgary and Vancouver. Vancouver got shellacked last night against Dallas. Those teams are about to go through their gauntlet. And can they sustain the same point system that the Blues have put together over the last 2-week stretch?
There's going to be another team that makes a run. You probably got to go on a slide at some point, but regardless of what the points look like, and right now, for what it's worth, those of you that aren't keeping track at home, Calgary is in that final wild card spot as of today with 70 points. Vancouver is tied with the Blues. They both have 69 points. The Canucks, though, have played 63 games. The Blues have played 65 games. So there's some games in hand to play with here. As of today, the Blues have earned points in 11 of their last 13. They have allowed 3 or fewer goals in 7 of the 9 games since the Four Nations face-off. They're playing a structured game right now, and it's allowed them to have a lot of success. As I mentioned, Money Puck has them as a top 12 team in the league as of today. The only Western Conference teams that Money Puck has is better than the Blues as of today. The Jets, Stars, Vegas, Avs, and Utah, interestingly enough, is the 5th team. But those top 4 teams, Winnipeg, Dallas, Las Vegas, Colorado, I think those are legit the top 4 teams in the West. Yep. And then from there, you can have a conversation about who you want to throw in there at 5th. The Blues are at a minimum in a conversation for that right now. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into our free agency frenzy. The NFL's free agency period started about 15 minutes ago. That doesn't mean that guys haven't signed, though. There was a lot of transactions over the weekend, whether it be re-signing with your team, a couple of trades that took place. We'll get into all of that in 15 minutes. Coming up next, though, the Cardinals are making their intentions clear when it comes to Michael McGreevy's role for this team. And could there be a surprise contender for the last spot in the Cardinals rotation? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Yeah, they got big balls.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, we are now into the final 2+ weeks of Cardinals spring training, and it's been a pretty solid spring training thus far.
Yeah, are they hitting?
For the guys that are contending for the final spot in the rotation. They're starting to hit a little bit. Gorman has looked really good lately, by the way.
They hit 4 bombs in Florida.
And most notably on that is Nolan Gorman, who sucked hard for the first couple of weeks of spring training.
Whoa, man.
He's been good over the last.
Man, if I combine that with Hofer's comment, we would have a weird end of the show drop.
You really didn't need to say sucked hard.
I mean, it's
Come
true,
on, man.
But on the pitching side of things, John Mozeliak was asked yesterday on KMOX about the rotation, and if things have gone according to plan thus far, here's what he had to say.
Two guys that have really stood out that maybe weren't being considered for the rotation that are definitely make some more difficult decisions. You mentioned McGreevy, and I'd say the other one's been Libator. So both throwing the ball really well, and so we'll have to see how that plays out. But you'd rather that kind of math than the other way. So, net, we feel pretty good about that.
First of all, he's got to stop using net. Second of all, I don't like that he said that they weren't being considered for the rotation ahead of time. McGreevy, why wasn't he being considered ahead of time? But again, let's set that aside. And then third of all, set aside, Alex, I know you've got some thoughts on it. Set aside the Liberator comment there.
Wait, hold on. Set that aside.
There's a lot of setting aside going on
How
here.
do I set that aside?
I want to focus on McGreevy. He is the most important part of this conversation because to me, apparently not to Mo, but to me, the competition going into spring training was McGreevy versus Matz. And McGreevy, to me at least, was always a decision of, do you keep him with the big league roster as a starter, or do you send him to the minor leagues as a starter? There was no third alternative. And what I did like, and this comes from Ollie Marmol, who was asked about this by the reporters down there in spring training, Ollie Marmol said flat out, I don't see him as a guy that will benefit at all by going to the pin and breaking with us in that type of a role. My preference would be for McGreevy to start. When you go into the offseason and a lot of the messaging is around opportunity, then you want to keep guys in the role that they see themselves in long term. For him, we see that as a starter. He was then asked about, okay, what about like the style of pitcher that he is? Does that play into your decision? And he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, yeah, he's a ground ball guy that doesn't play up in the bullpen the way that like Gordon Graceffo could. McGreevy's a starter. His value is the innings that he gives you. There's no reason to transition that guy to the bullpen. I audibly exhaled when I heard that, Alex, because I was scared to death that the thing that this team would do is force a square peg into a round hole with Michael McGreevy, whose entire value is the stability that he brings to the back end of a rotation. I would just plug him into the rotation today and see what it looks like for 30 starts this year. Just find out. And if it's terrible, cool. Go into 2026 with a different plan. But for this year, give him that extended runway of finding out what he can do starting every 5th day for your big league club. I don't know if that's what they're going to do or not, but if you're not going to do that, the second best alternative is send him down to AAA and have him start down there to be ready to go as your 6th starter whenever he is ready to go. Alex, when you hear what John Mozeliak had to say, you hear what Ollie Marmol had to say, what is your current impression on where things stand with Michael McGreevy?
I love the way that Ollie has framed that. And frankly, McGreevy is a starting pitcher and should be in your rotation. Everything you just described, BK, of how he should go out there for 30 games, and if it doesn't look good, well, then you can figure it out. That's a pretty refreshing feeling, isn't it, to transition into a younger pitcher to put into your rotation rather than stick with Steven Matz and all of these guys.
It's like a youth movement.
Maybe it should be for a team that probably isn't expected to do much. But if they put him in the bullpen, you're making a massive mistake in terms of the development for a guy who should be there for you in your rotation. And it really feels like you didn't learn anything, Cardinals, from what you did with Andre Pallante last year. Like, Pallante showed you the ability to be a starting pitcher, but you just kept forcing it and be like, no, he could be a bullpen arm for us. And then last year, it started off pretty rough, and they said, well, we should probably send him down so he can figure it out. Come May, he's in AAA, he figures out the starting pitcher, and he comes up and is kind of a savior for your team. I don't understand how you're the Cardinals if you see what Andre Pallante did last year and you say, you know what, let's just skip everything that we did prior to May and just put Michael McGreevy into the rotation and say, this guy's a starting pitcher for us. And you're right. Guess what? If it looks bad in the first couple of months, then you just send him back down and you let him work through his stuff again. But putting him in the bullpen and saying, hey, we know you're a starting pitcher, but go be a bullpen pitcher for us. Man, that is going to jack up a pitcher that should be a part of the solution for you. So I think you should be in the rotation right off the bat. Frankly, Steven Matz, appreciate what you've done under the contract, but you can go be a bullpen arm for us. McGreevy's more important for this team pushing forward than McGreevy in AAA and Steven Matz in your rotation.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that they may potentially, even though their process clearly wasn't right again, but they may end up falling into what is the best decision for them, which is what PK said. Throw them in the rotation. You know, if it doesn't work, you can either make a change in season or, hell, you just do it for this year because you're in this, whatever we're calling it now, transition. And then you can just change the plan when you go into 2026. Because I agree, McGreevy's not going to profile well out of the bullpen. When we talk about bullpen arms, we're talking about guys that have velo that's up high and have just legit swing and miss stuff. And McGreevy doesn't have that. And I think that's fine. You can have a couple of those guys in a rotation, especially if they're going to be like a 4 or 5 for you. And a guy like McGreevy, who in theory, I mean, I think we mentioned this last week, in theory, he could potentially be a guy that you don't have any innings restrictions on because he threw like 170 between AAA and the majors last year, which is the nice thing.
Most innings pitched in the minors over the last 3 years. Of
Right
all
there.
minor league starters.
He's already thrown 284 innings at the AAA level.
There you go. So, like, he should be a guy that there are no inning restrictions, that you see a lot of young arms that when they do get up here now, based on how they develop at AAA, they're, like, limited to 120 innings, and then you get teams that get halfway through the year like, what do we do?
You know what's ironic about McGreevy? He actually went through the full process of developing. What's ironic is because of the style of pitcher that he is, which is just nothing exciting. Like, there's nothing exciting about Michael McGreevy. I'm serious.
Put that on a T-shirt.
He's like he sits low 90s. He doesn't have this slider from hell. Like, he's just a classic Cardinals starter. Guys that they built around in the early 2000s into the early 2010s. Michael McGreevy, welcome to Central Casting. Like, this is exactly who they used to build around. And now they have swerved so far into the other direction that they don't really care about pitchers like Michael McGreevy anymore. And it happened while he was in their system because they drafted him in the first round, and then suddenly they swing in the other direction to where it's like, Michael McGreevy. It's that old meme, right? Like, you're looking at the girl in front of you, the girl behind you. It's like, whoa. And the girl behind you is Quinn Matthews. The girl in front of you is Michael McGreevy, who you're suddenly no longer all that interested in.
Been there.
And yet it allowed him to develop properly. They didn't put him on the fast track to Major League Baseball. They said, go ahead and season down there. We'll get to you when we get to you. There was no urgent need for him to get to the big league level, which has hindered the development of, I don't know, a half dozen starters for them in the past. Like, look at Matthew Liberatore. He clearly wasn't a ready-made prospect. He wasn't. He needed more time down in AAA. But the Cardinals needed him and his left-handedness at the big league level, so they rushed him. What is happening right now with Michael McGreevy is the way that it's supposed to work for minor league starters in their development process. All right, speaking of Matthew Liberatore.
Yeah, can we get back to the actual main discussion right now?
Yeah, so he mentioned 2 guys that were not in discussions to start at the beginning of spring training have inserted their names into that competition. One is Michael McGreevy, who in 7 innings so far in spring training has a 1.17 ERA. He has allowed 6 hits and 0 walks in those innings, so he's doing pretty well. Matthew Liberatore so far in spring training has yet to allow a hit, 0 hits so far. He's thrown 7 innings, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk.
That's a starter.
Shut up.
Here's John Mozeliak on Matthew Liberatore.
Well, I still am in the camp of, he's a really talented player, and I think he's going to end up being a very successful starting pitcher in the big leagues. He is unique because I think he could do either bullpen or start and be successful. But I think the one thing that you have to recognize is he came in tremendous shape. He came in prepared. He's taking his fitness and preparation to a whole new level. So these are things that, a year ago we weren't seeing, and now we are. And so it's very encouraging. And like I said, it's a good problem to have right now.
Okay.
Can I clarify something real quick?
Sure.
The man who made the trade of Arozarena for Matthew Liberatore believes he could still be a really good starting pitcher.
It's definitely self-indulgent.
He's in the
Good.
best shape of his life.
That's
Didn't
fair.
you hear?
I've heard
I
that
did
one.
find that to be interesting, right? Did that hit your guys' ears the way that it did mine, and apparently the way that it did for Kevin Wheeler, which I respect? Huh.
Mine was more of, that classic cliche.
Yeah, I was going to say, the first one that gets the best
I did
shape of his
not-
life.
Can you replay that real quick? Just that one part about him in his his work habits, being prepared to go once they got to spring training, because I found this part of the quote to be a little, to give us more insight than maybe he intended for it to. Sometimes a quote can tell you as much about what didn't happen in the past as what has happened this offseason. Take a listen to this one more time.
You have to recognize is he came in tremendous shape. He came in prepared. He's taking his fitness and preparation to a whole new level. So these are things that, a year ago we weren't seeing, and now we are.
That's the part that I find interesting. A year ago, we weren't seeing him taking care of his body the way that we have this offseason. Like, yes, that is a best shape of your life quote. It's also he wasn't prepared, which is actually a knock against Matthew Liberatore in some ways, if you take that at face value. Alex, the whole thing with Matthew Liberatore is very simple. Can he get right? He's out. Because if the answer to that is yes, he can be a starter. If the answer to that is no, he can't be a starter. In his career at the major league level, he hasn't been able to. He's just terrible against right-handed hitters. Here's their OPS against him by year. 1,000, 865, and 825. That is as a starter and as a reliever. So in some of these spots, especially last year when he was mostly a relief pitcher for the Cardinals, he's going in there in advantageous situations where they're trying to avoid those hitters because that's the worst case scenario for him. And they still put up an 825 OPS against him, which is really freaking good. That's like basically every hitter against Matthew Liberatore became Wilson Contreras last year as a right-handed hitter. That's not good enough. And if he is still that pitcher, he cannot be in your starting rotation. He has changed things up with his arsenal a bit in the offseason. We'll see if that is something that works. A lot of the time you hear about this, they had a pitch, and then boom, by the start of the season, it's gone, right? You get 2 starts in, and then you don't see that pitch that they had been working on all offseason. So I don't know how much to believe in that, if at all, but that's the thing that allows him to take that next step as a starting pitcher for the Cardinals, because I don't think there's any doubt. If his stuff plays in the rotation the way that it has in the bullpen, this is the guy that can be a mid-rotation starter for you. I just don't know how much I can trust, if at all, that he's actually going to get right-handed hitters out now.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I get it. It's the development. We always remind ourselves when we get frustrated with younger players that they are a younger player, hence a guy like Jordan Walker. I'm not sitting here bashing them because they're going to give it a shot. I think I'm sitting here bashing it is because every single year it's the same story. Well, you think he could be a really good starter. Well, you think he could be a really good starter. When you already have seen what his role is and how good he can be. He's really good as a reliever. And it might just be what you're talking about, BK, to where, yeah, they put him in prime situations, so he goes out there and he gets those outs compared to when he's got to go through the lineup. And if he fixes it, great. That's a hell of an asset for this Cardinals team. I think there are other pitchers that they need to give the opportunity to be starting pitchers for, rather than continue to try and make it work with Matthew Liberatore. But again, if he goes out there and he performs well, applause to them, because I didn't expect it. But for right now, it frustrates the hell out of me because you already know what he's good at, and just keep him in that role.
Well, and that's the part that makes it tough for me is he's good at the bullpen role, as we saw, because he can be put in situations where he can get left-handers out, avoid as many righties as possible. And, I don't know, maybe he can fix that issue, and then we can revisit this conversation. But he's already good at the relief role. The other thing for me is when you talk about, hey, let's look at their rotation, next year and years to come, they've got a ton of arms already coming, man. They've got Quinn Matthews who's coming. McGreevy's now on the door, ready to knock in to try and get a role. Palante's here. Quinn Matthews is here. Their hope is Tink Hintz will be here soon, along with TK Roby, who had a pretty good spring. They've got a ton of arms that are already building up as starters, and now you're going through this process again with Matthew Liberatore. I think Mo clearly wants him to be a starter. If he's going to be in any kind of starting role, I think it's going to have to be like the Nick Martinez role, which is what he's done with the Reds, which is, hey, when we're in a spot like they were last year, which is, hey, we don't really have somebody ready. We need to go to him to be a spot starter. I think that's fine. I don't think that's the best way to utilize him, but they can do that. To me, his best role is, hey, high leverage left-handed reliever that can get lefties out that we can turn to out of our bullpen. And maybe if we need to, we can have him go 2 innings if necessary.
I don't mind him as a starter if he can get right-handed hitters out. I have no reason to believe thus far that he can do that. This small sample size that we've seen of 7 innings so far in spring training, I'm cool with them continuing to push him. Let's find out. As spring goes along, now you're going to get further and further along. It's going to be harder for them to get innings for guys. So a lot of guys are being sent down to the minor leagues right now. If you're Matthew Liberatore and you're getting this opportunity, show it, man. Show it to us the rest of spring training. And if there is real reason to believe that you can now, for whatever reason, suddenly get right-handed hitters out, hey, man, I'm actually kind of okay with them opening up the start of the season with Matthew Liberatore taking that spot that Steven Matz had previously, and Steven Matz taking the spot that Matthew Liberatore had in the bullpen. Because that just allows you to put Steven Matz into the position that I think is going to be best for him long term, and it allows you to potentially flip him at the deadline, and you find out what you've got in Liberatore. If he stinks, so what? It's a transition year anyways, and you just bring Michael McGreevy up for that spot in the rotation. If he's good, hey man, we just found out we might have actually developed a starting pitcher. And now we've got Palante and McGreevy and Liberatore. Eventually, hopefully, Quinn Matthews adds his name to the group. Hey, we're suddenly starting to look at this rotation a lot differently. So I don't mind them going this direction, but it requires a lot of information between where we're at right now and where we are on opening day. That to me, the best case scenario is that Liberatore still becomes a starter. I just don't believe in it yet necessarily.
Well, and to me, it's taking the spot away that should be Michael McGreevy's right out of the gate.
I was just about to ask. Like, who's more valuable to get the innings to this year, McGreevy or Liberatore?
Yeah.
So I don't think you lose anything necessarily by having McGreevy start in the minors. I don't think there's a lot left to be learned about McGreevy. Does that make sense? Like, I think that McGreevy is pretty much who he's going to be. And it stinks for him, but he's got options, and so you just don't lose anything there. He can still go down to AAA. Hey, go get your innings. He's going to be needed at some point this year. I would probably start him on opening day. But there is some urgency with Libby to get answers, because there's going to come a point in time very soon where, to your guys' point, that rotation gets very full with young players. And I'm not pushing young players from the rotation for Libby to find out if he's going to be a starter or not. Once Quinn Matthews is here, he's in the rotation every fifth day, and that guy is a part of your rotation for the foreseeable future. Once Tink Kentz is here, if he gets here, he's going to be in that rotation every fifth day for the foreseeable future. Same thing is true for McGreevy. Same thing is true for Palante. Like, those guys aren't getting pushed for Libby. So if you're going to find out, this is probably the time to do it, because eventually, instead of it being Steven Matz that's pushed out, it's guys that you actually want to see here that are going to be a part of this for the long haul. So that's why I would consider it right now.
See, and
if you're going to do it, now is the time that it has to be done, probably.
And I think we're on the same page. I'd just rather see McGreevy, right? Like, I still think there aren't a lot. Now, maybe there's not as much upside potentially there in McGreevy because he is a contact pitcher. But I still think there's a lot to learn about Michael McGreevy.
What if it's Fedde's traded, McGreevy's in the rotation for him, and Matz goes to the bullpen, and that's your spot for Libby?
And I'm in there.
That's best case scenario.
I'm all in on that. I was operating under the assumption of, like, hey, Libby's taking Matz's spot because it's the Cardinals and Mo doesn't do anything fun and exciting.
I think that's most likely.
Yeah, and then that's the case. I'm not doing the Libby starting.
More likely. I would also say this: you're going to need some depth, and right now, if they go the route that you're talking about, where it's if we go with Fedde traded, Matz to the bullpen, Libby and McGreevy in the rotation, dude, if Libby fails and Matz gets hurt, you don't have a fifth starter. That's the fear, I think, on the other. That's the downside of what that potential path is. We'll get more into this coming up at the 12 o'clock hour with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Twitter is down, so there's not a whole lot of updates for you guys over there, but we do have updates from NFL or from ESPN's NFL department. There's been some signings. We've got a guy that's going back to his team. It seems like the receiver market stinks at this point because everybody went back to their teams. And the Chiefs signed a tackle. I'll tell you what his name is, and you can tell me if you've ever heard of the gentleman. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londa Chevrolet and Johnny Londa Fado Plex. Blues got 3 of 4 points possible over the weekend. They are off until Thursday when they hit the road, and they'll be taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Cardinals will be back in action tonight as they've got a night game 5 o'clock against the New York Mets. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londa Chevrolet and Johnny Londa Fado Plex. See Milano.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, we've got some updates from the NFL. Twitter's down.
No!
But we're going to bring as
These
much
signings aren't
information
real.
to the good people as we possibly can. There have not been a ton of signings thus far today in free agency. This began about 45 minutes ago. However, there are a few. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs have been active. The Bucs have signed Hassan Reddick, 2 years, $14 million, the former defensive end with the Jets and the Eagles, who had that weird standoff with the Jets.
The frustrated defensive end for the Jets that wouldn't play.
Sounds like he's going to play football again. He's going to do so for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Chris Godwin is sticking with Tampa. This was always expected. He got a 3-year deal. I have not seen any confirmation because, again, Twitter's down on what the money is on this. But Chris Godwin sticking with the Bucs for the next 3 years.
$44 million up
good
on
deal by them,
ESPN.
man. It's a really good deal for them.
Kind of
What do you guys make of the Bucs early on?
I like the moves. I mean, what do we know about the Bucs, right? Like, you got your 2 dominant receivers in Evans and Godwin, so you could keep that thing rolling. And then defensively, and I saw over the weekend they brought back Levante David as well. So you're just bolstering up that defense, which is always kind of a mainstay for Tampa Bay. So that's a sneaky good offseason for them so far.
All right, next thing up here, the Chiefs also active. They have signed former 49ers offensive tackle Jalen Moore. 2 years, $30 million.
Jeez, overpay much.
$21 million guaranteed. Now, you may not be familiar with Jalen Moore because he started a total of 12 games in his NFL career.
Oh, that's a good pickup, Chiefs.
26 years old. He's a young guy, formerly of Western Michigan, and that is the extent of my knowledge of Jalen Moore. He's previously played for the San Francisco 49ers. Allegedly, he's pretty good, super athletic. I don't know. We'll see how this one ends up working out. The Chiefs desperately wanted Ronnie Stanley.
And?
He re-signed with the Baltimore Ravens over the weekend on a 3-year deal worth $60 million. I certainly would have felt a lot better about that deal than this one.
You don't like this one?
But that's the answer for them at left tackle. They also have signed Elijah Mitchell, former running back for the 49ers. Bring some speed. They desperately need some explosiveness in the running back room. That's more of a depth move. $3.5 million for Elijah Mitchell on a 1-year deal. T-Bone mentioned this during the break. It's a good point. He basically replaces what you had with Samaje Perine. What do you guys make of the Chiefs' early moves?
You want to use the Brad Underwood sound effect?
Yeah, not great. I mean, I guess
Ronnie,
Ronnie,
man, if you're trying to get a left tackle in free agency, T-Bone, you know this as well as anybody. It ain't going to work out well for you.
I guess Ronnie Stanley
Too
picked
many options.
We signed a 40-year-old Whitworth when I was a Rams fan.
I guess Ronnie Stanley picked the better quarterback. You know,
Yeah.
he picked the better quarterback to be with.
And a winning window,
Yeah,
too.
I can
may
understand
add.
it. I guess I get it with Ronnie Stanley. You know, you got to go with the winning quarterback, and you decided to pick the right one.
That guy's an MVP.
Chiefs called, and they said, I think I'm going to stick with Baltimore and my MVP, Lamar Jackson.
Chiefs did also re-sign Nick Bolton over the weekend, and they signed Hollywood Brown to a 1-year deal worth up to $11 million. The move with Hollywood, and we're like, oh, that's obviously a reaction to that. It sounds like that's not the case. We'll see, though. But the Chiefs active early on in free agency. Over the weekend, there was some other moves. A big one. How about Pittsburgh?
That's massive.
DK Metcalf, second-round pick, going to the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gets a 5-year deal worth $150 million for Pittsburgh. Sounds like Pittsburgh is now turning their attention to the quarterback position. Either Sam Darnold or Aaron Rodgers are the likely answers there, according to reports.
Tactic.
What do you guys make of what Pittsburgh's trying to do?
It's a great move, man. Finally, they have a legit dominant pairing for their wide receiver room with George Pickens and DK Metcalf. If you get the quarterback right, that's a scary good offense with Mike Tomlin.
There's some speculation that George Pickens might be traded as a result of this.
That would also make sense, too, because, well, we've all had the issues, I guess, right, GP? But, I mean, look, as great of a move as that is for the Steelers, to me, that's a step backwards if you're going to get one of those quarterbacks. Like, you can't go out there and get DK Metcalf and then be like, cool, let's go win it with Sam Darnold or Aaron Rodgers.
I mean,
but,
what's your alternative?
Well, Fields and Wilson, which also aren't great. So, I love DK Metcalf. I would have liked to see him go somewhere other than Pittsburgh, but it's a really good move for Pittsburgh to try and stay relevant and get a really legit weapon.
Yeah, I like the offseason when we're talking about them, when we look at them as a football team on paper, and especially if I think Darnold makes all the sense in the world for them. I think Rodgers' name being floated out there is a negotiation tactic with Sam Darnold. I think Darnold, we saw last year when he's got a good offense around him, he can be a quarterback. I think get you 10, 11 wins. Now, what he does in the playoffs, who knows? But it actually gives you what feels like a positive direction. The one thing that I do worry about, especially if they keep Pickens here, is, dude, they've got two massive head cases in the wide receiver room. This is one of those where you look at it and go, man, on paper, holy crap, how do people stop us? But then when you aren't thinking about just the football side of things, and you look at what those guys are, Pickens throwing tantrums on the sideline. Pete Carroll used to bear hug DK Metcalf every time he'd come off because he wasn't getting the football. It certainly feels like that kind of move could also be the one that ends up really sending things into a spiral. Because Mike Tomlin's done a good job with Pickens. I don't know if he can handle two of those guys.
Yeah, I think one of them has to go. And
I agree.
It's not going to be DK since they just traded for him. My guess is that George Pickens ends up getting traded elsewhere. A few other pieces of news to pass along from the weekend. We'll discuss these further coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. Devontae Adams goes to the Rams on a 2-year deal worth $46 million. Josh Allen, once again, the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. The ceiling for these deals keeps going up. He gets a 5-year deal worth more than $300 million, $250 million of which is guaranteed. Jimmy Garoppolo heading back to the Rams on a deal with them. Robert Spillane just agreed to a 3-year deal worth $37 million with the Patriots. He's a linebacker previously with the Raiders, now going to the Patriots. Geno Smith traded to the Las Vegas Raiders over the weekend as well. He might get a new deal worth $40 to $45 million per year with them.
Been a quarterback.
Whew. A lot of activity in the NFL.
Devontae Adams, Ram.
And free agency just opened up.
Myles Garrett, instead of wanting to go to Canton and play for a contender, got a new 4-year contract extension worth more than $40 million per year and at home.
Hey.
I think that there should have been a camera on Jamar Chase as he saw that. Would love to also hear from Micah Parsons to hear how he felt about that deal. $40 million per year for a non-quarterback in the NFL. That's where we've arrived. So that is the latest in the league. We want to hear the latest from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, we'll get to them in questions and answers next here on BK and Ferrario.
Man, it was a perfect weather weekend. I hope you took advantage of it and got out to Ted Drew's famous frozen custard off of Chippewa. This is just your daily reminder to get out there and enjoy that frozen custard that has just been a St. Louis tradition since 1929. 4 generations of families have been serving people that famous frozen custard. It is a year-round tradition. Whatever you want, whatever flavor you want, whatever toppings you want, they've got them for you off of Chippewa. And you hear me talk about it all the time. It's a Friday tradition for us to get out there and just spend time at Ted Drew's and catch up with the family. So make sure you start taking advantage of this great weather and go get that famous frozen custard. And while you're out there, walk across the parking lot and check out the Ted Drew's gift shop, where you can shop Ted Drew's apparel, you can get Ted Drew's hats, Ted Drew's souvenir, and you can get Ted Drew's gift cards. Perfect thing to give somebody when they need a special gift. Go out and get Ted Drew's for free. So get on out there and start those traditions now. Go get that famous frozen custard off of Chippewa. Ted Drew's, it really is good, guys and gals.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for questions and answers. You guys have any questions, we'll get to them right now. You can always ask them on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. From the 636, Alex, which of the Blues defensemen, in your opinion, would be the easiest to move on from this offseason?
Ryan Suter, because he's a free agent. Was that sarcastic? You didn't like that? Sorry.
Let's ask this a different way. Leddy or Falk, who's easier to trade?
Leddy. It's fewer years, fewer or less money, and to be honest, he's played well since he's been back. Falk is still going to be a difficult one to move on from because although $6.5 million isn't that bad considering the salary cap, you still have, I think it's 2 years after this season. So I would say Leddy's the easier one to move on from, but honestly, they're both in the same boat. They're older defensemen. They haven't produced the way that you kind of expected them to, and they're both going to have modified no-trade clauses. So really, it's going to come down to, does a team need a right-handed defenseman, or does a team need a left-handed defenseman? And it's going to come down to, what do the Blues need for their team next season?
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line from the 314. T-Bone, this is something that we were talking about earlier today. We made reference to it, though, in a different starting pitcher going the other direction. Guys, the Yankees have some pitching injuries. Steven Matz has pitched well in New York previously. Do you think Mo could make a trade there? That actually makes some sense. Steven Matz to the Yankees, potentially.
Yeah, I think they're going to look cheaper than Matz because Matz is making $11 million. But if you can eat some salary, I think they would do it. He makes sense. I think they're going to look for somebody, though, that can throw innings for him. That's the other thing. Now that you've lost Garrett Cole and he's done, his arm's blown out, I think guys like Erick Fedde, Kyle Gibson, who's on the market, make more sense for the Yankees than what Steven Matz does, because Matz has the same injury concerns as, well, not as, but has the same injury concerns. And I don't think if you're looking at them, you don't want to bring in Matz.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, I thought BK said a couple of weeks ago you could see a path for Mizzou making it to the Final Four, and they still let you have a job. A couple of weeks ago, I could. This is something that I've never totally understood about this job. Guys, as information changes, our opinions have to change. That's the whole role. If you in your life, like if something changes in your life, right? You have a kid. You previously loved your job. You loved everything about your job. But the hours are not conducive to allowing you and your wife, you and your partner, to having a happy marriage and for you guys to be able to raise that child together. And you need to make more money. And so suddenly the situation changes. Guess what? Your opinion of your job is going to shift accordingly, right? Because there was a huge life event that took place. And now your opinion, your situation changes. When you see something change tangibly about a team, in my opinion at least, your opinions should shift on that team. So to answer the question directly, yes, I did indeed say at that point in time after they beat Alabama that Missouri looked the part of a potential Final Four team. And they did at that point in time. They no longer do, obviously. Their defense has taken a massive step back, and they don't look like the same club that they were 2.5 weeks ago. So as of today, what would I pick them to do in the tournament? I'd probably pick them to get to the second round and lose. That would be my current projection for them in the NCAA tournament. I still think they have the ceiling of a team that can make an Elite Eight type of a run, depending on the draw. But, yeah, no, I don't have the same feel about Missouri as I did 2.5 weeks ago. I don't know how anybody possibly could.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. They've kind of put themselves into that position because 5 games ago, they seemed like a team that was destined. And it wasn't just us saying it. I mean, you had some of the best basketball insiders in the college game that were saying, like, Mizzou is going to be a handful once they get into the tournament. And obviously that thing shifted. And I heard D. Arman say it earlier today. Like, can we, as much as we're panicking about Mizzou and it's rightful, let's also remember they're losing in the SEC, which we've talked a lot about how the SEC is a gauntlet. And he's like, there's been plenty of SEC teams that have lost 4 games in their last 5. So I think they're probably a team that can win 1 or 2 games. And then from there, it's going to just come down to luck. Are you shooting well? And are you playing it hotter than the other team? That's what March Madness is all about.
From the 314, BK, you're just a front-running homer. You change your opinions like Missouri changes weather.
Oh, it's been pretty consistent,
saying that
though.
you're considering a move to Alaska, BK? BK, that sounded oddly specific. Are you trying to tell us something?
BKO leaving?
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. From the YouTube chat, a reporter is saying that Rodgers to Pittsburgh is close. How would you guys feel about that if Rodgers ended up being the next starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't think that's a good idea at all.
Yeah, I think the team's not a playoff team. That's how I would feel.
Or I mean, for Rodgers, rather. For Rodgers, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, there's not a whole lot of great options for you.
It's a disaster.
And Pittsburgh at least has a good coach and, at a minimum, a good receiver. For Pittsburgh, though, I would rather go with Justin Fields. I would rather go with Sam Darnold. I would rather go with...
I'd go Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. I think there are better options at this point.
I'm not going to bring that soap opera to the team. I'm not. Especially after I make a move to get DK Metcalf, which might also be a soap opera in itself. But, man, I'm not going to go for 1 year of a rejuvenation from Aaron Rodgers where I haven't seen it for 3 years to just all of a sudden be like, oh, he's going to be good again.
If you were going to go with Aaron Rodgers, I would have just taken a year of just, hey, let's just kind of tear this thing down. Right? Their problem is they keep getting stuck in the middle and they have no path out of it because they never have a quarterback. And it's not like Rodgers is a guy that you can bring in and kind of dream on. Like with Fields, like I guess you can kind of dream on it. Odds are it's not going to hit. Sam Darnold, same thing. You can kind of dream on it. Odds are he's just going to be fine. Rodgers, it's like, dude, he's going to play a year and probably retire. And then on top of, like you said, brings a soap opera, which Tomlin's going to hate if that happens, on top of what Tomlin's going to have to deal with Metcalf when he doesn't get the football from him.
I know that like they were joking around of like Ben Roethlisberger coming out of retirement. I'd take Roethlisberger over Rodgers.
I mean, I wouldn't do that.
Oh, I would.
Roethlisberger
less of a
terrible.
Less of a soap opera.
Dude, Roethlisberger had plenty of his own drama.
He had some early on in his career.
But
and
this version of Ben Roethlisberger.
That might be
less
worse.
soap operas.
I'm good.
He's an old man. He's retired.
In 15 minutes, we continue our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals for the 2025 season. In 30 minutes or so, we'll get back to the NFL's free agency with an update for you guys. But coming up next, there was a really interesting quote from the weekend that I think went a little under the radar from Braden Shin about the culture that has started to reemerge from the Blues. It's something we've doubted a lot over the last few seasons. When it looks good again, we got to talk about that. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care who are here to help you maintain your HVAC system. If you're like me, you got an old unit in your basement that's supposed to get you through the hot summer or the freezing cold winter, and you've got to have the right company that's maintaining that older unit for you. Or maybe it's a brand new one, and you just want to make sure it gives you the longest span of life possible. Classic Air Care has been doing this since 1926, making people comfortable, and I speak so highly of them because they've been doing it for my family for the last 30 plus plus years. My dad has always used them. I've used them since 2016. And with Classic Air Care, incredible customer service, incredible technicians when they come out and fix whatever issues that you might have. And they explain it to you, which is so important when it comes to a unit and the money that you're putting into it. And here's the thing. Right now, you need to call about the maintenance agreement because it's starting to get warmer, which means that hot summer's just around the corner, and you need to be a part of this maintenance agreement. What it is, twice a year, Classic Air Care comes out, they fine-tune the unit, clean it, make sure it's good to get you through that season. And if there's any issues that pop up, you call them, you get priority because you're on the maintenance agreement. So schedule it today. You could do so online or call the office. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you at Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Alex, culture can be a funny thing. It's hard to build, it's easy to break, and for the Blues over the last few seasons, it feels like they haven't had it internally. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK.
You've been working on that since you got to the office today, didn't you?
What do you mean?
He was working on that last night.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say
I don't know
stuff
about
that's not
culture. Yeah, I know it wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad. I'm just saying, like, I know you didn't just come up with that on the fly.
I did, I promise you.
No chance. No chance.
He saw it as a bumper sticker on the way here. He's like, oh, that's a pretty good one. We should talk about culture today at 12 o'clock.
It's the old quote about trust, right? Trust is hard to build, easy to break.
Oh, so you're stealing from something else.
Exactly. I saw that on a bumper sticker once.
Oh, see, it is a bumper sticker.
For the Blues, they have not had a great culture based on their own understanding of it internally over the last few years. They've been trying to build that thing back up, and man, it's hard. It's hard to do. And it's the old saying about pornography from the Supreme Court. You know it when you see it.
What in the actual bleep just happened?
What would you consider to be pornography? You know it when you see it, right? It's the Supreme Court's definition of it. Well, that's culture. Somebody on the text line said, guys, how would you define it? It's hard
pornography.
to say.
That's how I define it.
It's a feeling, it's a vibe, it's all of these different things. And Braden Shin over the weekend was asked about what the Blues are building, and here's what he had to say. I don't think he referenced pornography.
From my perspective and a few others, we haven't had this feeling in a couple of years. So, it's important, to keep pushing this forward. St. Louis is going to be obviously set up good for the future, but these are big games to play in. It gets guys competitive. It gets guys, playing for one another, and that's how you establish or start building a culture and a winning culture again. So.
That was that audio courtesy of Jeremy Rutherford, who had a great piece on this over on The Athletic. We'll talk to him about it tomorrow when he joins us here on the show, as he does each and every Tuesday. Alex, what did you make of that quote by the captain, Braden Shin, especially in tandem with the quote that we heard over the weekend from Nick Leddy, who said this is the first time that he's felt this like this overall feeling of what the Blues have right now inside of their locker room since he played for the Blackhawks.
How dare he?
7 years ago.
How dare he?
It's pretty. I like being compared to that version of the Blackhawks personally.
Be a dynasty.
In terms of like the success.
Like
That's
cups.
it. That's the only part of that Blackhawks run that I want to be compared to. Is just the success.
Oh, wait, yeah.
This isn't another pornography question.
No, let's set that aside now. Okay, so the Blues, what they're building right now inside of that locker room, what did you make of the quote that we heard over the weekend from Braden Shen?
That this team has finally got that winning feeling back into the locker room. And that winning doesn't make your culture great. It just strengthens the culture. And I think what Braden Shen's getting after is, for the longest time in this locker room, it's been broken in the sense of they don't feel connected. And when the losing happens, it just gets worse and you don't know how to stop it. Now, it's finally back to the group of players all pulling the rope in the same direction. And to me, that's what culture really is. Like, I always reference that 2018-2019 season, not because they won a Stanley Cup, but because when that team was the worst team in the National Hockey League, you walked into that locker room and it felt like the team was in the middle of a 10-game win streak. Like, they always had that positive feel to it. Despite the downs of that season, you felt like they were going in the right direction. It just was a matter of confidence. And hearing Braden Shen say that, and the part that really got me was this team's going to be set up for a lot of success in the future, because this isn't about Shen feeling this way or Justin Falk feeling this way or even Jordan Binnington feeling this way. This is about neighbors saying it's the most fun he's had and the most competitive he's felt since he's been in the NHL. It's about Dylan Holloway. It's about Philip Broberg. It's about Zach Bolduc. It's about those younger guys getting the same feeling that the Blues have had in the past. So when you've got everybody pulling on the same rope, that begins that culture. And the one thing that Jim Montgomery has said since he has taken over as head coach for the Blues, he's like, we've got to get back to Blues hockey. Blues hockey, the work boot style, the forecheck heavy, 60 minutes consistency. That's the culture that Braden Shen's trying to figure out and trying to put back into the room as a leadership core. And it sure sounds like, and everything we've seen has backed up what he said, that they figured that side out of it. And typically when that happens, adversity doesn't hurt you. When one bad thing happens, like the LA Kings game, when you think you score 45 seconds into the game and it gets taken back the other way, bad culture, that team breaks. Good culture, you're thinking, we're back in this hockey game, and they were. That's the culture I think he's establishing.
The text line said this. This is Chunk in the Chuck. Says, I think that feeling of, oh, how is this going to go wrong is gone now. It feels more like we don't need to press. We'll figure it out and get the win, or at least get the points that we need.
To that point, watching Nathan Walker on the bench in that Kings game, they had a shot of him. It was after the Kings scored that first goal. He was looking at the right side of the bench, and you could hear or see the words that he was saying. It was, guys, let's bleep and go. We've got this. We'll be fine. Let's just stay focused. That's the culture they're talking about.
And that's really important. And it goes back to what we've seen from them, and not just since the Four Nations face-off, but even a little bit before then. Think about how many games a previous version of the Blues, whether it's this year, last year, 2 years ago, how many games during the stretch it would have been easy for them to let go of the rope. Say, you know what? We don't have it tonight. It's not going our way. We're not going to be able to come back. Or like, for example, on Saturday, that was the definition of a game that you would typically see the previous version of the Blues. It's just not our night, boys. You get down early. You're without your top two defensemen in that game. You're playing in a back-to-back. It's the third time that you've played the LA Kings in a week stretch. You're on the road where they are the best team in the NHL on home ice. They play a physical style. It's infuriating to get the puck even through the neutral zone against them. It's hard to sustain any offensive zone time. Like, all of these things and so much more. It would have been understandable if they kind of let go a little bit and said, you know what, we got a decent break here coming up. We got a big opening in our schedule. We've had this travel. Like, we'll get it the next one. It just wasn't there for us tonight. Would have been understandable. Instead, they go out there, battle their asses off, and find a way to get a point in that game.
Yep.
That is culture. That was a culture win on Saturday. And so when people ask you to define it, when people say, like, how do you know if it's there or not? Games like that. That's when you find out if you are truly a winning culture or not. Because when you get a point in that game and you get it the way that they did, where every single player on the roster is sacrificing and they're finding ways to make winning plays, that's what it looks like to have a winning culture.
You just nailed it there. Like the bad culture for the Blues was 3 years ago when they won 7 in a row and then they lost 6 of their next 7 games. A bad culture is the term that Doug Armstrong has used in the past, individual contractors. A bad culture is guys that are trying to make the play happen himself because it's not working in the game. And they're like, well, I got to do this. A good culture is when you haven't scored a goal for 2 periods against the LA Kings and you've been battling your ass off and you just stick with the program.
How many times have we seen over the last 3 weeks now, I guess it would be, a player, whether it's Kyrou or Bolduc or Booch, just dumping in deep?
Yep.
Just a simple play. And like previously, you don't really think anything of it when the Blues were playing that way during their winning window. But now you look at it and you're like, that's not a play Jordan Kyrou makes 2 years ago. That's not like Zach Bolduc, I think, is one of the guys that's really making a lot of these plays right now. And he knows when to pick his spots, too. That breakaway that he had where he split the defenders in the middle of the ice, turned it on speed-wise, and then boom, gets the puck in the back of the net. Like, he knows when he can do that, and he knows when he doesn't have to do that. And I think there's a key difference there, and there's a learning period that is necessary. It happened quicker for him than it did for some of these other guys, like Kyrou, for example, but it's starting to click for all of these guys.
Yeah, like I always think back a couple of years ago against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you guys will probably remember this. The Blues went into the zone. They took a shot on Andrei Vasilevsky, and then Robert Bortuzzo took an extra hack. And the moment he took an extra hack at Vasilevsky, every single Tampa Bay Lightning player threw the gloves down and jumped into that scrum because they were protecting their goaltender, and it was a team mentality. That's where I think the Blues are at right now. It's a 5-man unit that's on the ice trying to do the one thing that they can to win the hockey game. And it's not one guy out there that says, I'll do this myself. You finally got the buy-in from the core of this team. You finally got the buy-in from Jordan Kyrou that's not focused on getting that sexy highlight reel play. You finally have the buy-in from a Robert Thomas who is looking to dump the puck in and go forecheck for it. And when you've got your top line doing the same thing that your fourth line is doing, that's the culture you're searching for if you're the Blues. And Jim Montgomery, I think, has said it best. He's like, every line is playing the same way. It doesn't matter what line I put out on the ice, when, and at what time of the game, they're doing the same thing. That's the culture that Braden Shen's talking about.
And for me, the most important part, I mean, he mentioned it, buy-in, which is the most important part of this, but it's also the buy-in and it's working too, right? Because we've seen at times where the Blues try to do this before, where they try to do a little bit of this, okay, we're going to play this different style, and it just didn't work. Why? Because they didn't have the guys to make it work. And I think that's the thing right now with this Blues team is they've had the guys. It's been the same message. Like, we can date back to when Kyrou first got here, and I don't want to just point at him, but I'm going to use him as the example because he's kind of the guy that's been the bugaboo for fans over the last 3-4 years. This is the same message Berube told him. This is the same message that Shen's probably been saying ever since Kyrou got here. Hey, this is the same, I assume, message that Bannister said. Hey, this is the same message. Jim Montgomery's not saying anything different. It's just coming from a different messenger, and it's finally clicking in of, boy, okay, now everybody here on this roster that maybe wasn't buying in is hearing it again, finally buys in, and when they do buy in, it is actually working. Because it is one thing to buy in, and if it doesn't end up working for you and you don't go on the run that they have toward the point where Army didn't become a seller at the trade deadline, then I think they just revert back to themselves. But they're seeing that this is the kind of style that wins in the NHL, and that is what is most important about this.
That's the value of a coach.
Yep.
That is the value of a coach that comes with the gravitas of Jim Montgomery.
It's the players are willing to buy into the coach's mindset. Again, this goes back to the pre-Hitchcock. You had Davis Payne saying the message, who was fine, but they didn't buy it. Ken Hitchcock stepped in, and they're like, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about.
And I don't – it's hard to say exactly what it is that does that, right? Whether it's the history that Jim Montgomery had with these players.
I think it's track record, too.
If it's track record of him having a President's Trophy in the very near future, or – hey, he had that success in Boston because he's a really freaking good coach. And whatever it is about Jim Montgomery, there's something about him that players buy into. And I don't know how long that lasts. It didn't last all that long in Boston. It's also worth noting that Boston's not a very good hockey team this year, and sometimes that just happens as well, and the personnel goes away, blah, blah, blah. But I think Jim Montgomery's a really good head coach. And whether that lasts 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, I don't know. I would take the under on the 20 because it doesn't happen in the NHL, but hopefully, maybe he has this crazy sustained run of success here in St. Louis. It's working, and that's what matters. The Blues needed to find the coach that allowed this to work, that gave all of these players that are currently here a chance to have success. You eliminated that variable. Now you can evaluate the roster, and we are absolutely having every opportunity to evaluate this roster right now, and the returns have been positive.
Yeah, I think real quick final thought on this. I think what works when it's Jim Montgomery is when you go over to a Jordan Kyrou and say, hey, this is how David Pastrnak had success, and this is what I want you to do. You're more willing to listen if you're that type of player than bringing up a player that you coached in the AHL. And I'm not trying to shoot down Drew Bannister, but it is just that gravitas of a Jim Montgomery stepping in and saying, hey, we did this with David Pastrnak. Patrice Bergeron did that. I'd like to see you try and accomplish this. The player's more willing to adjust because of those all-pro players that played for him in Boston.
He's Alex T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll give you the latest with the NFL's free agency period, which officially began in earnest just about an hour ago. But coming up next, we continue our countdown of the 20 most important players for the 2025 season with a player that we're still not totally certain is going to be on the roster on opening day. We'll tell you who that is next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. That means different things for different people. For me, that meant going over there, finding out where all of my levels were at. That's testosterone levels. There's a healthy range for adult men. They'll find out exactly where you are in that, whether you're on the lower end, they could get you back up to the top, or if you're already at the top, they'll tell you, hey, listen, this is not something that's a problem for you. If you want to go even further, though, what I really liked about it is they can check your micronutrient levels, which means going in there and find out where you are on everything from a cellular level. They can find out exactly where you're at and then help you meet those needs, whatever that means for you. For some people, that means weight loss goals that they're trying to meet. It could mean erectile dysfunction that you're trying to get a handle on. They can help you out with those as well. They also have vitamin infusions. They've got their supplement shop. They've got red light therapy programs, and they even have cardiovascular testing. They've got all that available to you at their 4 great locations across the St. Louis area: O'Fallon, Missouri; O'Fallon, Illinois; Sunset Hills; and in the location that I go to typically, in town and country. It's all available to you at Victory Men's Health. Check them out today at victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, yes, we continue our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals for the 2025 season with number 15 on our list. It is Erick Fedde. We had an interesting range of rankings on Fedde. I had him at number 16 on my list. T-Bone was at number 15, which ended up being where we have him. Alex had him all the way up at number 9 on his list, though. He ends up being number 15 overall. Fedde was really solid last year. Not spectacular, but a really solid pitcher in Major League Baseball. A prototypical number 3 starter. Doesn't get a ton of swing and miss, but maybe a little more than what you would otherwise expect. Mid-3s ERA. And Alex, we go into this year, and I think that's roughly what I'm expecting out of him. Slightly below 4 ERA. You probably get to the end of the year, and you think to yourself, he's fine. Erick Fedde is fine. But you need guys like Erick Fedde in your rotation if you're going to be successful. My question for you, though, is will we get to the end of the year with Erick Fedde in the Cardinals rotation? Because I think that's really the question that every Cardinals fan has as of today.
And that's why he was number 9 on my list, because no, I don't think you get to the end of the season with him on your roster. And I think the biggest piece of his importance for the Cardinals this year is the return you can get for Erick Fedde. And I don't know if it's going to be a lot. And frankly, if it's a prospect, you're going to be waiting a few years for him. But if he pitches the way we think he's going to pitch to be a legit number 3, then come trade deadline time when a team that is trying to go for a World Series is looking to bulk up in their rotation, it's a perfect thing to throw out there. And also, if you're the Cardinals, man, you could be packaging some stuff together with Helsley to get the return, with Fedde like a Helsley to get the most return possible. I think Fedde is going to be impactful for this team because, frankly, out of the guys that are expected to be in your rotation, he's probably got the second best upside of the rotation pitchers that you're going into the season with. But why he was so high up on my list is the trade that is potentially available to you. Might even be now, but whatever you could get in return for Fedde, that's how you keep this thing moving forward.
Yeah, and he ended up lower on my list because, to me, maybe I'm stuck in my ways here. I just don't know if he carries a significant value for the Cardinals at the trade deadline. Now, if he pitches well, things can change. But, he's watching him pitch here in St. Louis, he was just fine. And I think he carried more value in the offseason as a trade candidate. That's why I screamed from the mountaintops all offseason, hey, they should trade him because teams can take him on at $7.5 million as a perfect, number 3 starter for them, and they can give him the QO when most of those starters are making $15 to $20 million. So I just worry he's not going to have a ton of value. I mean, you look at what the Cardinals gave up for Erick Fedde. They gave up Tommy Edman, and he didn't even go to the White Sox in that deal. They gave up an injured player to the Dodgers who joined them as part of a 3-team trade. So that's why he's lower on my list. And even when I think about, and I've said this before, when I did my list, I balanced the what's best for the future on top of, hey, how do they win games in 2025? Even then, I think there's more pressure on the offense than there is on Erick Fedde for that sense. So that's why he ended up coming in right at this spot at number 15 on my list.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think that he has value with that qualifying offer. I mean, if you're a team, I look at it as essentially a 2-year deal worth $27 million because he's got $7 million this year, and then he's got the qualifying offer that would allow you to have him next season on that $20 million contract. And the reason why I say that is because even if he leaves, you get a draft pick in return for him, and that's not a bad situation either. And frankly, I don't think Fedde's the kind of guy that's going to be able to turn that down. I think he could find himself in a situation that Nick Pivetta did this past offseason where he turns it down and then has to settle for a really low, below market value deal elsewhere. That's not good for anybody involved. You look at what it was last year on the offseason market. Frankie Montas, you guys, here's a question for you. Do you think Frankie Montas is a better pitcher today than Erick Fedde?
Isn't Montas hurt?
More often than not,
yes.
I would say
Frankie Montas last year threw 150 innings and had a 4.85 ERA. 2 years ago, he didn't pitch. 3 years ago, he pitched 145 innings and had a 4.0 ERA. 2021 was the last time that Erick Fedde was good, that Frankie Montas was good. He had a 3.4 ERA that year.
Yeah, I would say Fedde's probably the better arm.
Frankie Montas this offseason got a 2-year deal worth $35 million.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lower market deal with Fedde than you would if you went to the market and signed somebody that I agree with you, T-Bone, I think is worse with Frankie Montas because you're getting 2 years, $27 million for the next couple of seasons with Fedde. So I'm giving up a decent prospect for that. I don't understand the Cardinals' hesitance to trade him unless they are truly terrified of their lack of depth. And they look at this season and internally, they believe they can be better than we do on the outside looking in. It's the only thing that explains it. Similar to Doug Armstrong, where Army came into the season and said, I think this is a playoff team. And I disagreed with him, and I'm still not entirely sure that they were actually a playoff team, but they made the moves that were necessary to put them in position to be one. They traded for Cam Fowler. They went and signed Jim Montgomery to be their head coach. Like, they did what was necessary. I just don't know if those kinds of moves are there for the Cardinals. You've got your manager, man. That ain't changing internally during this season. I don't think that the Cardinals are going to go make some aggressive move like the Blues did to go acquire Cam Fowler. So I just look at it and I still say, as of today, I would trade Erick Fedde. I would do it now. I would trade him to the Yankees, who just ended up losing Garrett Cole. They already have the Gill injury that they're dealing with as well. The Mets also have a bunch of injuries that they're dealing with in their rotation. So I have to imagine there is some kind of a market for him out there, and that's what I would be looking to do. That's why I had him a little lower on my list. I don't think Erick Fedde finishes the season in St. Louis, and I think if you're going to trade him, I think now is the time to do so.
And I think they probably missed where their best offer could be still. I still think there probably would have been a better offer later in the offseason. I still think I'm with you. I still think you can trade him. But, like, I mean, you mentioned that contract for Montas, right? There aren't, as we've seen, these mid-market, small-market teams aren't adjusting to what the market has become. Those teams weren't going to go out there and pay for that market. They weren't going to go out there and give Montas that kind of a deal. They would be more likely to take on the Fedde contract because he was making $7.5 million, and they can then decide on the QO when they get there. Right. They may not even decide to do that just because of the fact of, man, that's a lot of money for us to add to our books. But that's why he was so valuable, was every team in baseball can afford $7.5 million. That's why I never understood it from the very get-go of the offseason that he was never in conversations to be traded.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't get it. There's got to be more at play here that we don't understand, and I think it all goes back to, like, whether they just didn't think McGreevy was going to be ready for whatever reason this year. I don't know. This
Fedde decision, it's probably the number one that I look at and say, this is why my list is about balancing the future and trying to win in 2025. Because to me, keeping him is just a pure, we are trying to win. I'm not buying
the only thing that makes sense.
I'm not buying that we're worried about our depth thing. Most teams are worried about their starting pitching depth.
But it does matter, though. If you're trying, I think the two are connected, actually, what you're talking about there. If you're trying to win this year, trading Erick Fedde means that you lack depth, and it makes you worse for right now, potentially. Like, if the team did trade Erick Fedde, and Steven Matz, everybody in our listening audience right now is assuming that Steven Matz is going to get hurt this year. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we operate under that assumption and you no longer have Erick Fedde, well, then you're probably going to have to put one of those spots is going to be Michael McGreevy. The other spot is?
Well, apparently, according to the Cardinals, Matthew Liberatore.
But in the offseason, that wasn't the expectation. No. Now you're pushing Quinn Matthews ahead of what you...
Either Matthews or Graceffo, depending on what they wanted to do.
And I don't think they're comfortable doing either of those things. So that's where this comes from, is if you're worried about Matt's health and you don't want to push your young guys ahead of schedule, this is probably what you end up with.
But then why not do what T-Bone suggested? Trade Fedde and then go sign Kyle Gibson for a cheap deal.
That's what made the most sense to me.
I thought that made sense all offseason.
I mean, you can't sell me on how this is a retool and we're trying to get young players development and then keep Fedde and Matz and say they're in our rotation. And I understand the whole thing about the innings and you don't want to rush these young players. And frankly, I agree with that because you've screwed up some guys. But go re-sign Kyle Gibson for $8-10 million and put him in your rotation. The guys that should be pitching for you are McGreevy, and if you believe Liberatore, put him in the rotation. Matz and Fedde should not be there.
I'm totally with you. And somebody on the text line said, hey, guys, wasn't this supposed to be a youth movement? That gets back to what you're talking about, too. This scenario that we're presenting right now at least allows you the opportunity to get something in return for Fedde, and it allows you to see some of these young guys get that opportunity at the big league level. So it's a little confusing. I don't totally understand it, but Erick Fedde does make you better. If we're just setting aside the trade value that you could get in return for him, the Cardinals are a better team with Erick Fedde on it. It's hard for me to suggest otherwise. Similar to the Nolan Arenado thing, right? Are the Cardinals a better team with Nolan Arenado on it? Probably.
But that wasn't the goal. And that's where I feel like it fell to. In the Arenado thing, it was pushed there. But the goal was never to be good this year.
For us.
For them,
it should have been. It should have been for them, though.
It clearly is.
It shouldn't have been,
I think at some point in this offseason, things changed for them. I don't know what dictated that decision. I think some of it is Wilson Contreras and Sonny Gray coming back makes you think, okay, could we be a little better maybe than we thought? Some of it is probably the Central probably isn't going to be that good this year. Nobody around you got all that much better. Some of it might be the money situation. At the beginning of the offseason, they weren't sure what the outlook was for their TV deal. now they have a better idea of what that TV deal is going to look like. And some of it is just flat out they were told no by Nolan Arenado. He said no, and so you're like, okay, well, if we're going to have Arenado and Contreras and Sonny Gray, we might as well try to win this year, but without pushing. And that's where I think they once again got stuck in the middle. They said we're going to try to win, but they didn't actually really try. It sounded like over the weekend, Mo said once again on KMOX, hey, there's still some opportunity for us to potentially add via the market with a reliever. David Robertson is out there. He's one option for them. Phil Maton is out there. He's fine. Craig Kimbrell is out there. He's not an ideal scenario either. He was terrible last year. But Maton and Robertson are both legit relief options. And Robertson's a guy that I would be interested in. So maybe they end up doing that and continuing to bolster what they have internally.
Then they'll come out and go, we're all in, folks.
Yeah, we're a playoff contender.
On a 1-year, $4 million
Yeah, they're going to
deal.
tell our buddy Eric Kratz, we signed Nick Anderson, as we told you, and David Robertson. Jump on board.
And block another bullpen arm potentially that is young to get opportunities.
Who cares about
We're
that?
Coming up
retooling.
next, we'll give you the latest with NFL free agency here at BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendricks here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues pick up 3 of 4 possible points over the weekend on their West Coast trip. They are off for the next 3 days before they head out to Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins on Thursday. We'll have pregame coverage starting Thursday at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. Cardinals will be back in spring training action later on tonight as they take on the Mets at 5 o'clock. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's dive into some NFL free agency updates here on BK and Ferrario. Chris Godwin re-signing with the Bucs, 3-year deal, $66 million for the veteran slot receiver. Khalil Mack is re-signing with the Chargers on a 1-year deal worth $18 million. That's fully guaranteed. The Panthers, Alex, have made J.C. Horn the highest paid defensive back in NFL history. That is one that we did not discuss earlier today, but J.C. Horn got the absolute bag. I would expect you see something similar from Derek Stingley of the Texans at some point in time, and Trent McDuffie of the Kansas City Chiefs
Pat
as
Surtain
well.
too. Pat Surtain too.
He got signed already,
Did
right?
he?
Am I mistaken on that?
I
think he was previously
I think
already
he signed
signed.
last offseason, if I remember correctly.
My guess is he'll re-sign again if J.C. Horn gets the bag.
Yeah, he got a 4-year deal worth $96 million last offseason, so it'll
pretty
probably
good.
be a while before he gets his contract.
Still pretty good, but yep. Cornerback's getting the money.
Chiefs signed offensive tackle Jalen Moore, who started all of 12 games in his NFL career, to a 2-year deal worth $30 million. Seems like people are a little split on that one thus far.
What?
Hassan Reddick, who didn't want to play football last year, got a $14 million deal for 1 year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Other moves that have come in so far, if you're a fantasy player, Elijah Mitchell, a guy to keep an eye on. Running back that signed on a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. He's a super athletic guy, just can't seem to stay healthy. Jordan Lewis, a cornerback for the Jaguars, previously with the Cowboys, is now going to the Jaguars on a 3-year deal worth $30 million. And the big ones that have come in recently, we'll stop on these, Alex, and kind of discuss them one by one. Dan Moore, the guy that you would see in like a Madden game where you're in year 27 of your franchise mode. He hits free agency. Dan Moore, the most generic name at left tackle in the NFL, signed a 4-year, $82 million deal with $50 million guaranteed to play for the Tennessee Titans. Left tackle previously with the Steelers, now heading to Tennessee. What do you make of that one?
That sounds like a desperation move, but I guess I can understand it when you're the Tennessee Titans. You kind of have to be desperate for anybody that's willing to come sign with you.
This cap spike, it's going to result in a lot of deals like this. $80 million for a guy that's an average left tackle. That's the new market, man.
It's kind of why I'm
It's
surprised.
like a Major League Baseball. Back in starter, $20 million.
It's kind of why I'm surprised Ronnie Stanley just didn't go out there and see the market. Like, I get it. It's the Ravens, and you stay where you're happy. Where's your stuff at? It's Baltimore. But if you're him, I think you really could have got paid in the offseason if you just didn't re-sign with Baltimore.
Chiefs were standing there with the bag ready to go.
And he said, we want the better quarterback.
Said he wants to stay where he's at. I mean, honestly, I respect it. You got $20 million. He's fine. He's going to get a 3-year deal from them. But this deal with the I find this one with Tennessee to be interesting because it's another sign that they're trying to build everything else out before they put that quarterback in there. I'll be interested. Signing a left tackle, even if he's just average, if you're going to draft a quarterback number 1 overall, we'll see what they decide to do. It makes a lot of sense. You don't want to have a situation like the Bears did last year where you have the quarterback and you forget, oh, no, we have to protect the guy. That potentially puts you in a really bad spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. If they go quarterback number 1 overall, that deal will make more sense. It still is a overpay from the Titans, but that's what they've done. Like, the Titans are that team.
Everybody has to do. Good luck getting a left tackle, dude.
Especially if you're bad like the Titans have been over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the Titans is, like, they continue to be a team that it feels like misreads the market and has been terrible in free agency. But again, that can all change if they end up getting the quarterback and things start to really lock into place. But I don't know. Based on all reporting, doesn't seem like they have been that high on the quarterback class that they've talked about even adding like Abdul Carter with the number 1 pick or going with Travis Hunter. So that's if they do that, they go that route. They take either the defensive end or Hunter, the wide receiver. then I'll really look at this left tackle side and go, okay, I don't know what we're doing, and I don't know how we're getting our quarterback. But, yeah, we're Tennessee. Nashville's nice.
Carlton Davis, cornerback, has agreed to a deal with the Patriots. 3 years, $60 million. He was traded last offseason from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to Detroit. Really good physical press cornerback for the Patriots. Makes a lot of sense. Vrabel is there now. He fits into what they're trying to do defensively. They also agreed to terms with offensive tackle Morgan Moses, a 3-year deal worth $24 million. And the Lions have signed a deal with cornerback DJ Reed. So that's all the stuff that has taken place today in the NFL. Is there anything that's happened so far today? We'll get into the deals from this weekend here in just a moment. But anything that's happened today, Alex or T-Bone, that has stood out to you about what's happened in free agency thus far?
I mean, we just mentioned the money and how much these guys are getting, but I'll tell you the one team that made a really good move, in my opinion, was the one that you just mentioned, DJ Reed with the Lions, especially when they walked away from Carlton Davis, who wasn't that good for them last year. Defense still struggled, and then you bring in a better cornerback. That's a really good move for a team that needed to find a way to fix their defense.
So I have Ennis Rakestraw, former Missouri Tiger, coming back. He was not healthy this year for them, so they've got Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, DJ Reed. That's a pretty good trio for them defensively.
It's interesting. They saw how bad their defense was and were like, hey, we should upgrade this. The Cincinnati Bengals saw how bad their defense was and like, we'll trade our best defensive player.
Let's get rid of everybody that was good on this defense last year.
But let's
sure it'll work.
Let's just date T. Higgins for one more year.
Yeah, why not?
That'll help us win.
And then pay $45 million a year to Jamar Chase.
Wow.
And split with our best defensive player.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing that's what it's going to cost, but wow. Hassan, I like the Reddick signing from earlier today. Tampa Bay, look, I know I didn't want to play football last year. That was weird. It was the Jets. Hey, man, it's a signing that's got some upside. And it's a guy that had 16 sacks 3 years ago, 11 sacks 2 years ago. Like, there's still some potentially upside there. So I like Tampa Bay taking that along with just re-signing, keeping that group kind of get together offensively. One thing that I am curious to see as we get going, but I don't know what their pivot is what are the Patriots going to do to help the wide receiver room? Because that was like the talk that we talked about. Hey, maybe they get the T. Higgins. Maybe they trade for Metcalf. And right now, well, Higgins is, as Alex said, still dating Cincinnati. And Metcalf is off the market now. And we've seen a couple of the big wide receiver names sign. I don't know what New England's going to do with that wide receiver room, but I think right now they've missed out on what their expectation was.
Man, that's a really good point. Who is the top receiver that's now available in the market?
I mean, he's not on there yet, but like when Rams are expected to cut Cooper Kupp.
Is it Christian Kirk?
He signed, didn't he?
He signed?
He got traded.
Oh, he did get traded.
That's right.
Wow, that's right. I forgot.
I mean, the free agency is really bad. It's why people made a lot of what the Chiefs did over the weekend with Hollywood Brown. Dude, they got him back on an $11 million deal. He has not signed yet. That could be a good one.
Stephon Diggs, so that's probably the best one out there.
He's coming off of a major injury.
Which is probably why you haven't seen it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's, and like Debo got traded already, so like, I don't know what their pivot is.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know that gets me excited.
Yeah, he's more name than
I'd take an injured Diggs over Cooper.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Darius Slayton is another receiver that's out there. He's fine. Yeah. De'Ami Brown had a really good postseason for the Commanders, but that's not getting anybody excited. I mean, they're probably going to have to go wide receiver in the first round. Like I think they have backed themselves into having to do that this year.
And that may not be the worst thing.
Alternatives out there,
and especially like as we've talked about, like Higgins will be on the market next year, assuming that Bengals aren't re-signing him.
They'll just keep dating him.
But yeah, I mean, like Higgins will be on the market, so then you can go out and get Higgins next year, and you go in, you draft your number one or number one or two, whatever you view him as, in the first round this year. Like the plan can still work, but I have found it interesting because I thought for sure they would be a team that would add a Metcalf or try and push for a Debo, even though like that cap hit's big. It's still a really good player to add to your roster, and so far it's been a big swing and a miss from the Patriots.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Aaron Rodgers, by the way, it's been rumored that he might be an option for Pittsburgh. There's also been some consideration that the Steelers could be in on Sam Darnold. Where do you guys think Sam Darnold goes at this point in time? The teams that have been most rumored for him, Pittsburgh, Seattle, and it's like murmurs of Minnesota.
Yeah,
Two spots that have been rumored for Aaron Rodgers are Pittsburgh and Minnesota.
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold screams Seattle, especially trading away Geno Smith. That feels like a Seattle move.
That just feels like a waste of money to me.
I'm with you.
If I'm the Seahawks, I think Pittsburgh makes the most sense. You bring him in. I mean, they clearly they've added Metcalf. They're going to get stuck once again in the middle. If you're going to get stuck in the middle, at least have a quarterback that's like could be 15 to 20th best. I mean, he was that this year with Minnesota, and we saw they could win with that guy and maybe end up getting one or two playoff wins. I mean, you're not winning a Super Bowl, but you're remaining competitive. I think he goes to Pittsburgh.
That makes the most sense to me. I just can't see Pittsburgh doing this thing with Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't make any sense to me. I get it from his perspective. If you're Rodgers, that Yeah, that's the team that I would want to go to as well. I've got a good defense. I've got a decent running game. But he doesn't fit with what they want to do offensively. Like, the system that they're running there, they need a quarterback that's mobile. And Rodgers isn't that. He's 100 years old right now. So I don't get that from their perspective at all. Sam Darnold fits everything they want to do. They want to take deep shots, and they want a guy that's mobile. He fits the offense. Rodgers does not. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, Katie Wood, a great article earlier today talking with Yadier Molina about his future as a manager. Last week, we got the quotes from Albert Pujols. This week, we got them from Yadier Molina,
makes sense.
who went so far as to say I'd be willing to manage the Cubs if that's where the next offer came from.
How dare he?
Yeah, he said the thing that's going to get the fan base riled up. So we'll talk to Katie about that in 15 minutes. The Junk Drawer is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So, Alex, you said you're not sleeping well lately?
No,
What's going on? Are the kids waking up overnight? What's going on?
No, it's not even that. I've been waking up these last couple of days, and my neck has been hurting, my back has been hurting, and T-Bone's right. Must be old age.
Yeah.
But I asked my wife, I'm like, is something, like, am I doing something? And she goes, yeah, you're sleeping like you're having an exorcism. I go, what are you talking about? She goes, the one morning you woke up and my neck was on one side of the bed and then my body was contorted a different direction. She's like, you keep sleeping weird. And
you need to sleep a backpack on.
No, you know what?
I do that in college when I would get too drunk. Is that way you don't roll over?
That's why you're passed out on the bed. The way that we saw you in Alton, Illinois that one
in the
day.
Fetal position.
Yeah,
you always
your
got it face down, not up.
Is that why you always carry a backpack around?
Yeah, that's actually a bad move to sleep face down, especially when you're around other people. But regardless, no, I don't do the backpack. I sleep in a sleeping bag.
What?
I've tried this. My wife does this when we go on trips and hotels because I've scared her senseless of bed bugs, but makes sense. Good move by her. Yeah, what I'll do is I put myself in a sleeping bag and then I zip up in it. So guess what? I can't contort my body because anywhere I'm going, that sleeping bag's going with me.
So you're sleeping in a sleeping bag in your bed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually pretty comfy, too.
I've never heard of that
It's like a Snuggie, only it's just a sleeping bag. Now, are there risks of me probably, like, suffocating myself? Probably, but
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Have any of you done this at home? I've never heard of this before. I'm not even saying it's a bad idea.
It's pretty comfy.
It kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I've just never thought of sleeping in a sleeping bag in my bed when I have paid for sheets and a comforter.
Oh, don't get me wrong. The sheets are still there. Yeah, it's just the comforter. But
Don't you get hot?
No, we keep it very cold in our house.
I was gonna say,
specifically
holy cow.
in my room. I have the fan on, and I've got an actual fan pointed towards me on top of the AC running in our house.
Good way. I'd hate for you to get hot in your cocoon.
Yeah, well, you can't. Then you're sweaty and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tell you what, the last couple of times I've done it, though, I'm not sleeping up in weird positions.
I mean, you came in pretty tired today.
Well, that's true. Well, I also had,
sure you're getting
I also
sleep
had
on the
back-to-back
sleeping bag?
9:30 and 9 o'clock games over the weekend, so.
Okay.
Somebody said you guys should seek professional help.
Well, I mean, that's
You're a freak.
Wow.
Well, that felt a
little
unnecessary.
strong.
No surprise on this one, Alex.
I don't understand that.
I hate to admit it, but I also sleep in a sleeping bag.
Thank you,
We
Mark.
got one.
Thank you, Mark.
We got one.
Oh, I'm not going to read that name. That's unfortunate.
Jamie's Vacation Speedo?
Nope. The one right below it. The one that admitted to doing it also.
Martin's Dangly Bits?
Unbelievable.
That's the
I can't. I actually thought that was Martini something, and I read it, and then I was like, nope, that says something else.
Nope. Hey, man, it's in the system. That's what I got to go
If
by.
it's
I
there,
can't see
it's
their
probably
number.
safe.
You can judge me all you want and call me a loser, 636. Try it. I promise you. This is like when people used to make fun of people that used Snuggies. Joke's on you, man. I'm comfortable.
I will say sleeping bag. I mean, I haven't slept one forever, but I used to have to take one to my grandparents before they finished their basement in Kentucky because like they had just one bed. So me and my sister would sleep on in sleeping bags on the floor. Not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't know if I'd do it in a bed.
That
but
would be the weird part. Like sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor in your bedroom's odd.
That would be
I'm
odd.
still sleeping in my bed. I just decide rather than
feels
doing
odd.
all the blankets,
Somebody on the text
put it on
line
there.
said, Alex is the friend who always does that weird thing but promises it works. You judge it immediately, but then in a weird way, it kind of starts to make sense to you.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm having this moment.
I'm telling you, and I tell you what, I don't wake up in odd, weird positions with my neck contorted one way. I don't hurt
Ultimately,
the
that's
next
what matters,
day.
man.
Hey, if I can avoid the back pain, I'll take it.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. So we were going to have Katie Wu coming up here in just a moment, but Ollie, they just sent this out. Ollie's going to be doing his media availability in 5 minutes.
How dare you.
We're going to switch things up a little bit. We'll get to Katie Wu coming up at 1:30. We'll do Can You Beat the Blues at 1:15. So 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. In 15 minutes, we're going to play a game of Can You Beat the Blues? If you text in, I can beat the Blues, we'll have 3 of you selected to go up against, is it Jake Neighbors today? Is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Jake Neighbors today in Can You Beat the Blues? Again, we'll get into that in about 15 minutes or so. A little bit of an audible as Katie Wu is going to join us coming up at 1:30. But next, we got to talk a little bit about college basketball. 2 local teams in very different situations. They have swung in the opposite directions once again. The Illini and Missouri. Will give you our thoughts next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. It is conference tournament season, baby. They start up this week. And Alex, it is time to put your bets down. Whether you want futures on the NCAA tournament, you want futures on Major League Baseball, you can do all of that. But on Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois, I'm going to be betting on the SEC tournament. No, I'm not going to go with my Tigers, even though they are 28-1 to win the SEC tournament. I'm going to go with the upside of Alabama. About 5-1 odds over on the Circa Sports app. That is the team that I will be betting on. But if you want to take more of a long shot bet, Kentucky's offense is rounding into form. They're 25-1 to win the SEC tournament this year. I like that as a long shot play in the SEC as well. So you can do that. You can bet over there with our friends at Circa.
Whether you're doing single game bets, going parlays, or maybe you're going those futures bets, you need to bring the most money possible back to you. And that is what Circa Sports Illinois. They're not limiting you based off of your winnings. They want you to compare the lines. They know you'll be using Circa Sports Illinois. So download the app today and get all your sports betting in with Circa Sports Illinois. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So we got to talk about T-Bone's Illini.
Yeah.
You don't even believe that.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I wish I could have been able to get the video of Alex on Twitter going, "We are back!" I couldn't get the freaking save, though.
That's because
Stupid Twitter.
It's probably hacked right now.
Illinois, after losing to Duke in a way that they have never done before in the history of their program, has followed that up with a 20-point win at home against Iowa. And then they beat Michigan on the road by 20 points as well. Over the weekend, I said going into Friday's game, Alex, T-Bone, if the Illinois Fighting Illini beat Purdue and they look impressive in doing so, you're probably going to buy back into this team, aren't you? And T-Bone said, "Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm out. I'm completely out on this team." I said, T-Bone, what you're going to end up doing is you'll say, "I've convinced myself that this team was just sick. They were sick, and that's why," literally, like the illness was going through the program. And they went up against Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Duke, three teams that legitimately have a shot at getting to a Final Four this year. Yeah, it makes sense that they went 0-3 of those games, even if they looked dreadful in doing so. Mm-hmm. Are you ready to buy back in, T-Bone? Because you won your final three games, you looked impressive in doing so. Are you ready to buy back into this team?
I think I'm going to buy back in. What the hell? Why not?
Idiot.
I still I have a really tough time knowing what their ceiling is because I mean these last two games, these last two games have shown me man, they could go on a run. But then I still have that Duke game in the back of my mind where I'm going, they weren't competitive. They also go through games, and it's not like it's one or two games where they shoot 25% from three. It's happened 10 times this year. I don't know what to make of them, but I'm in. You know what? I'm in for the roller coaster. I'm ready to have my heart broken. I think they have the potential to go on a run. I think the last couple games they've looked better defensively. I know they gave up points against Purdue, but at times they went through a stretch where it was, hey, they really locked them down while their offense went through another one of those ruts. And I didn't feel that way a couple of weeks ago, especially when we were talking in that right around that Duke game. The defense never really seemed to be in lockstep with what they wanted to be doing. I think I'm in. I'm willing to rebuy into the Fighting Illini. Say with me, Ferrario. We are back. We are back.
You want to put that hat on over there?
Yeah, good luck.
No.
You want to put that hat on?
I wouldn't recommend
that thing is bad.
I think BK
luck.
should put that hat on.
No. Talk about Mizzou and wear the hat.
I think Illinois is back to what you expected them to be this year. I don't know if they're the true Final Four contender that they appeared to be early on in the season. But, yeah, this team has a ceiling. I saw somebody on Twitter said over the weekend, like, hey, Illinois and I can't remember who the other team was, but it was one of those other teams kind of in the similar path. Like, they're the choose-your-own-adventure teams this year in the NCAA tournament because you have no idea. The ceiling for Illinois is getting to probably the Elite Eight. The floor is they're done in the first round. And they could legitimately lose in the first round.
In ugly fashion.
Yeah, because they're going to miss all their threes, and the other team's going to make all theirs, and boom, you're going home, you're losing by 15. Like that's who this team is, and they've shown that ability on both sides of it in the last 6-7 games. You've seen what the good and the bad can be for them. I don't know what to expect. Even in the Big Ten tournament, I have no idea what to expect. This could be sustainable. It might be, we look back on it, that was truly, they had an illness that was going through the team, and that took away their legs. They didn't look the part. I don't know. I'm not buying back in as much as T-Bone is, but yeah, it was good to see that the ceiling is back for them. That they have the ability to beat quality teams.
I think it's always good when you're playing well going into the tournament compared to where Mizzou's at and you don't have that confidence.
Put the hat on when you
do it. Put it on. Put it on.
Might help.
Yeah, well, we all know what happened when you put it on.
You guys know it only works that way if I believe it, and I don't believe that about Missouri right now.
Well, you believe they're bad, Missouri, so put the hat on.
That's the opposite of what the
hat.
Be
the conductor of that. You need an oppo on the VKO.
Again, that doesn't work.
You believe they're bad,
but it doesn't.
Drive that train off the rails.
Missouri has lost 4 of their last 5 games. The one win that they had came against South Carolina, which is the worst team in the SEC by a significant margin. The offense has been fine for the most part. They've scored 80-plus in each of their past 8 games. The offense is there. It hasn't changed all that much. Are they missing a few more threes? Sure, but they were hitting threes at an unsustainable rate earlier in the season. Unfortunately, they've given up 90 or more points in 5 of their last 6 games. The problem for them is defensively, they are not the same team that they were for a while. Teams are attacking them differently. They're getting straight to the bucket, and if on the off chance that Missouri does have an opportunity to stop them there, which they did against Kentucky, now, because Missouri is having to collapse into the paint, there's a wide open guy from the three-point line, and Kentucky was able to take advantage of that over the weekend because Kentucky can shoot it really, really well. So they fixed some problems, and they created other problems. When they haven't been doing that, they've been getting attacked at the rim at will. They're not creating the same amount of turnovers, which leads to the offense for them in the past 2 to 3 weeks. So I don't know what's going on or if this is going to be able to be fixed. I also think it is worth noting they're in a really freaking difficult conference, and 3 of the 4 games that they've looked bad in have been true road games in the SEC, which all of these teams in the conference have struggled with. So if I had to bet, I think Missouri looks a lot better in their first game in the SEC tournament than they have over their last 5. I think that is probably going to happen because they're going up against one of Mississippi State, or I think it's LSU is the other team that they could face. I don't know how much that means, but I think it's going to be semi-meaningful. Just look better. I don't need you to look amazing, but show me that you're fixing some stuff between the time that the season came to a conclusion on Saturday and when you play again on Thursday. You've got a little bit of a stretch here where you can fix some stuff defensively. Now is the time where Dennis Gates has got to come up with some answers because defensively, dude, for the last 2.5 weeks, they've had none. It feels like they learned all of the wrong lessons from that Alabama game where they were able to outscore their problems defensively. And since then, they have not gotten stops again against anybody other than South Carolina, and that's because South Carolina's terrible.
Yeah, I never like the feeling of a team when you're going into the tournament with the losing streak because your confidence is shook. And even if you can fix the defense or try and create some solutions for it, when one thing starts to unravel for you in a meaningful game, that's where the confidence is broke. So I'll be really curious because Dennis Gates is a great coach. We've seen him make adjustments on the fly throughout this year. Now is the point, though, where you have to make meaningful changes, and you got to get the players because, like you said, BK, when they try and overcorrect the problem in the paint, well, now you're giving up stuff on the outside, and then when you do that, you start chasing a little bit.
Yeah, I just, again, keep in mind, the SEC is unbelievable offensively this year. Here are the offensive ranks nationally. These are just teams in the SEC, okay? 1, 3, 4, 5, 6... 21, 22, 27, 25, 24, 44. That is the top, I think, 10 teams in the SEC. All of them rank in the top 44 offensively, with most of those that I just mentioned being ranked in the top 25. So they're going up against some of the best offenses that they will see. Most of the offenses that they see in the NCAA tournament will be worse than what they have seen in the SEC. And I'm including Oklahoma in this scenario, who's 24th, Vanderbilt, who is 25th, Kentucky, who they just played over the weekend, is 6th offensively. They've gone up against juggernauts on the offensive side of the ball. So that alone, just by going up against worse competition, could make it look a little better.
Yeah, and that is where I am at. Is typically I'm on Alex's side of, hey, man, they're not playing well, and I think that's a problem when you get into whether it be the March Madness or anytime you look at like any playoff format. When a team goes in that's cold, they typically get bounced early on. I just have a tough time figuring out, okay, is this Missouri is not playing well or Missouri is playing against really freaking good opponents, and that is what's making them look bad. And I think we're going to find that out. That's what's going to be so tough when we see the March Madness bracket on Sunday when they release it. It is going to be so tough to figure out, okay, what are these SEC teams? They're good, but which ones am I saying, hey, is the SEC really going to be as deep as it showed in the regular season? Or is this going to be one of those where, okay, we're going to see a couple of upsets. Some of these teams like Missouri, who wasn't playing well, ends up going home early.
All right, a couple other things to pass along here. SLU is playing much better basketball going into their tournament, and boy, do they need a big-time tournament, because the only way they're getting into the NCAA tournament is if they win the A-10. We'll see. We'll see what they're able to do, but they've looked more like the team that I thought they were going to be coming into the season over their last 5 or so, and now it's about finding a way to sustain that for a really good week to potentially get into the tournament. And congratulations to SIUE, man. Won their conference tournament. They are going to be heading to the NCAA tournament. They got an automatic qualifying bid. Huge win over SEMO, and not just a win, dude. They dominated that game from start to finish. So huge congrats to SIUE. That's really big for their program to make it to the big dance.
They were a juggernaut in that championship game, so they're going to be goes to the point that I like to make when you're rolling the right way. They're going to be a team to be reckoned with once you get in.
Congratulations to SIUE on getting to the NCAA tournament. That's what I'm willing to say.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to get a 16 seed.
That's fine.
They may be in the first 4.
We've
They
never
can win
seen
that game.
16 seeds win before, right?
Just once. Just the one time.
There's
They can
always
do
a
it.
chance.
Yeah, never tell me the odds, as they say.
All right, coming up next, we're going to play a
Fun
game of Can You Beat the Blues? We do have our 3 contenders going up against Jake Neighbors today. The winner will get a signed hockey puck by Jake Neighbors and a chance to see the Blues play a game down the stretch. We'll get into that next year on 101 ESPN. We got a nice prize today on the line for Can You Beat the Blues? A Jake Neighbors signed puck. That's great. You also get tickets to see the Blues versus the Canucks. That's coming up on March 20th. Blues versus the Canucks, and that is a game that is going to have a lot on the line potentially for both teams, depending on how things shake out over the next week or so. All right, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We do have our 3 contestants on the line in our game of Can You Beat the Blues? Today it'll be Scott, Vincent, and Steve going up against Jake Neighbors. Our game is very simple. We'll give you a category. You name as many different things in that category as you can in 15 seconds. We have the exact same category for Jake Neighbors. We've done this with him previously. We recorded it. And we'll find out who has the best margin of victory head-to-head against Jake Neighbors. Whoever has the best margin of victory will be going home today with a Jake Neighbors signed hockey puck and tickets to see the Blues versus the Canucks. That is coming up on March 20th. We've got our 3 contestants. We begin today with Scott. Scott, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Doing fantastic. Do you understand the rules of the game, and do you think you're going to be able to beat Jake Neighbors today, my friend?
Yes, sir, on both counts.
All right, beautiful. Love to hear the confidence. Scott, your category today is board games. Can you name as many different board games as you can in 15 seconds? On your mark, get set, go.
Sorry, checkers, Monopoly, Chutes and Ladders, Life. Risk.
For a minute there, I was like, "Where'd you go, Scott?"
We got. I got
God
6.
bless.
I got 6.
Yeah, I got 6 as well.
Scott, you were doing really well through 4, and then we got to Life, and then it was just a pure blackout for you, man.
Yeah, I blanked out.
That's all right. We'll see if Jake Neighbors knows his board games.
Hopefully, you didn't blank up.
Maybe he only got 3 of them here. All right, let's hear from Jake Neighbors.
Monopoly, Clue, Yahtzee, Trouble. Oh, goodness.
That's a good one.
I got good news for you, Scott.
What else did I play?
He only got 4 of them. So that's a +2. Is that what you guys got as well?
That's what I got as well.
What's your favorite board game, Alex?
Life or Clue, one of those 2. My daughter's obsessed with Mousetrap right now, and I despise Mousetrap.
T-Bone, did your family play board games growing up?
Oh yeah, we play a lot of them. The one that we play too much for me is what is it called? It's
Ticket to Ride.
Ticket
That's
to
my
Ride.
favorite.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride. My mom is obsessed with that.
That's my
I used to
number
love
one game.
playing Axis and Allies. Me and the boys would get together. It's like an 8-hour game.
Me and the
Hang
boys
out.
would get together and play board games.
Whoa. I can't believe the guy sleeping in a sleeping bag is being judgmental right now.
I think board games get a bad rap. Board games are great.
Yeah.
And if you're over the age of 30 or so, New Year's Eve, couple of friends, get some bubbly
Couple
out,
drinks,
get some drinks in
yeah.
you.
Yeah, me and the boys will get together.
Have a group of 4 to 6, play some board games for the night. There ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a nice night.
Me and the boys hook up and play some Monopoly.
Monopoly's pretty low on my list.
Oh, yeah.
very.
My family.
Speaking of playing for 8 hours.
My family can't play Monopoly after fights we've had in the past.
So Scott is up by 2. He's the leader in the clubhouse right now. Rough go of it there for Jake Neighbors. We've got Vincent is our next contestant up. He's going up against Jake Neighbors today as well. Vincent, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Doing fantastic. You understand the rules of the game?
Yes, sir.
All right. Vincent, your category today going up against Jake Neighbors is comedy movies. Name as many different comedies as you can that are movies in 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Tommy Boy, Black Sheep, Coneheads, Grown Ups 1, Grown Ups 2, Big Daddy, Happy Gilmore, Longest Yard, Funny People, 30 Minutes or Less, This Is the End.
I like how we just went with the Adam Sandler.
Yeah, he went a Saturday Night Live cast. Chris Farley to Dan Aykroyd and then right into Adam Sandler.
I respect the move.
All my favorites.
There you go. I like it.
Well done by you. What's your favorite Adam Sandler movie, Vincent?
It's got to be Anger Management.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a good one.
Did he even mention anger management?
I don't think he did.
No, I don't think so. Must not have been his favorite. No, he said Funny People, though, which...
1 and 2.
No, that was Grown Ups. Funny
That's
People
right,
was
that's
the
right.
individual, and that one, not as much.
Vincent, that was a good showing by you. He got 11 in that
Tough to beat.
category.
Yeah, very
Let's
tough to beat.
hear if Jake Neighbors knows his category of comedies.
Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, Liar Liar,
What's the one with Rock?
Jake.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
His problem was he started with Jim Carrey.
A little surprised by the era there.
There's not a big library to go through with Jim Carrey.
Jake Neighbors is how old? 23, 24 years old?
He's my age, I think.
And he's going to Jim Carrey early 2000s?
I mean, those are like cult classics,
Totally. Have you seen any of the films that he just mentioned?
I've seen Dumb and Dumber.
Liar, Liar?
You ever seen Liar, Liar?
Okay. Never seen Liar,
Yeah,
Liar.
that one's even better than Dumb and
Or
Dumber,
Ace
in my
Ventura.
opinion.
I've never seen Ace Ventura.
I'm a little surprised by the route that he went. It makes sense. Jake Neighbors is an old soul in a lot of different ways.
You didn't, again, you can't start with Jim Carrey. You got to start at least with somebody who's got a longer library than that.
All right, so Vincent is a +8. Scott, apologies, man. You had a nice start. Unfortunately, Vincent was able to take the leader in the clubhouse role from you. And now we're going out to Steve, who is trying to get at least a +9 going up against Jake Neighbors today. Steve, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good. It's going to be hard to trump since Neighbors doesn't obviously watch movies.
Hey, listen, they said it was over for the Blues, and they're right back into this thing. And don't call it a comeback, right, Steve?
All right, we'll see.
You never know. I might put on my conductor hat and
what
say
you
I
don't
think
need to happen.
Vincent's got this thing in the bag.
Steve, what you don't need to happen is BK put that hat on.
All right, Steve, your category today, and you understand the rules of the game?
Oh, yeah, ready to go.
All right, your category today is television shows. Name as many TV shows as you can in 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Seinfeld, Simpsons, 30 Rock. Let's see. Saturday. I don't know if Saturday Night Live counts.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Steve,
Yeah,
we
that
got
was tough.
4.
Yeah, that one was.
So we're going to hear what Jake Neighbors has to say here.
Basically, what you need is Neighbors to say like 7 movies that don't count, and he gets deducted points.
Yeah, I think that we pretty much know. Vincent, congratulations, you're our winner today. But we're going to hear
Steve.
from Jake Neighbors, see how he knows, if he knows his TV shows.
Suits, Stranger Things, How to Get Away with Murder, Outer Banks, Selling Sunset, Bachelor, Love Island.
Jake and I could watch TV together.
Yeah,
Love Island, Bachelor. Man, I've got a lot of thoughts on Love is Blind. I know none of you guys want to hear that, but if we do a podcast that's reality TV, I've got you covered right here.
Thankfully, that's not coming.
The Love is Blind reunion was last night. Woo, boy, were there some shots fired, to put it mildly. All right, Vincent, congratulations, man. You're our winner today. You're going home with a Jake Neighbors signed puck and tickets to the Blues versus the Canucks. A big game coming up on March 20th. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll get your info over there. Make sure we get you signed up for that, and we'll have him going home again with the Jake Neighbors signed puck and tickets to see the Blues versus the Canucks coming up on March the 20th. Alex, for you, what's your number one TV show that you've watched lately?
Lately, Night Agent. I'm starting to get involved with that, but
You like season 2?
It's not the greatest. Like, I don't have the best feelings about it, but season 1 was awesome. But my go-to is always The Office. People know that. It's probably every 3 months, I'll just be like, I'm ready to start The Office again. Oh, yeah.
Really?
I'll probably watch it all the way through every 3 to 4 months.
I think recently, and this is a few months ago now, but The Penguin was probably the best show I've seen recently. It was fantastic.
I'd agree. That was awesome. That's the best one I've seen in a while.
That was
Paradise was really good. Which we were just talking
I was going to say, Paradise has finally got me, but those first 3 episodes, my God.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Oh, terrible
The first 3, I couldn't stay awake.
That's you. You're old, man.
They were so boring.
Dude, you told me you went to bed at 9:15 yesterday.
Yeah, it was a long day yesterday.
Are you watching White Lotus, T-Bone? Are you a White Lotus guy? I can't
No,
remember
it's
if
on
you're
my
watching it or
list.
not.
I haven't started it.
I think the first few seasons were really good. This season, I'm curious if the text line agrees with me here. It's taken a while to get things going. I feel like this is a situation where, like, the first 3 episodes could have been an email, and instead we had a 3-hour meeting about them. I don't know, man. There's a lot of shots of water.
Someone texted it and said, once I found out Love is Blind didn't involve blind people, I was out. I can get that. Kind of misleading,
It's
you
the
know?
whole idea that you're dating somebody, but you're not seeing them, and so you find out what they are on the inside instead of the outside, and so you don't have any of these external factors that are a part of the dating process. It's really beautiful, honestly.
Don't they call that like Tinder?
It's basically Tinder.
I was going to say, isn't that literally just blind
You
dating?
want to play the game right now?
The opposite. Because Tinder, you're only seeing the external factors, right? Like you're only seeing the appearance.
So it's more
Do
of
you
Hinge.
stay
Got it.
blind the whole time?
No, so the whole, if you guys want me to explain it real quick. So the whole idea
I
of the
feel
show, the
embarrassed.
premise of the show, you're in a pod. So like Alex, you and I could be on opposite sides of basically a door that's right in front of us, right? A wall that's in front of us. And we're talking to each other, but we don't get to see each other until we decide if we want to go forward. And we're doing speed dating. So there's like 25 guys, 25 girls. They're speed dating for the first couple of days. And then they have connections that they have. And once you go further and further into the process, you have a week in these pods. And you decide if you're going to get married to one another. You're not actually getting married yet, but you have the first proposal. And then you have the reveal where you get to find out what the other person looks like. And then you went to a beautiful, basically honeymoon for a week. And then you get to live with each other for a few weeks before you get married. It's a 6-week process, and you find out if you're going to be with your loved one for the rest of your life or not. There was one... I'm not actually going to say what I was about to say.
No, you can spoil it, buddy.
There are weddings that take place, and some of them even stay together forever.
I'm going to say what 314's thinking out loud. Talk sports! Yeah.
Okay. Coming up next, Katie Wu, Cardinals Insider here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario here for Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, the real deal for real deals since 1976. Dobbs' team of 600-plus tire technicians and auto service associates care for your family vehicles. Whatever vehicle you might drive, gas, hybrid, with locations all over town, they'll help you choose the tires that you need. It's already sold at the lowest price in town, guaranteed. Quality name brand tires that will suit your vehicle and will suit your family budget. And over at Dobbs, the team is ready to service your vehicle. It's done right the first time, including routine and preventative maintenance, and you get complex diagnostic and engine repairs. And with most locations around, including their newest stores, which are out in O'Fallon, Missouri, and you've got one in Osage Beach, that's the Lake of the Ozarks area, full service tire and auto service has never been more convenient, so make sure you let the tire and service pros at Dobbs take care of your family vehicles. In time for the warm weather, making sure you're going to be in it, save those money deals in March over at gotodobbs.com. Dobbs, the real deal for real deals since 1976.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues off for the next 3 days before they're back in action on Thursday when they will be taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll have pregame coverage starting on Thursday at 5 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. And Cardinals will be back in action tonight, night game in spring training as they take on the New York Mets. 5 o'clock will be first pitch. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Couple pieces of news from the NFL before we get to our friend Cardinals insider Katie Wu from The Athletic. The Patriots are signing Eagles star defensive tackle Milton Williams to a 4-year deal worth $105 million. Ooh. Milton Williams getting paid out here. Also a big deal for Sam Darnold, who signed for $100 million with $55 million guaranteed in Seattle. So the Seahawks have their new quarterback after trading Geno Smith. They get basically the same contract for a quarterback in Sam Darnold, who showed some flashes last year, and they get a third-round pick for it. Not bad business, honestly, if you're Seattle. We'll get into those here in just a little bit. Katie Wu joining us now via the Callier and Thompson hotline from Cardinals spring training down in Jupiter. Katie, I know you guys were just able to speak with Ollie Marmol. I'm sure there was a lot to glean from that conversation.
Yeah, let's try this again. Sorry about that earlier, guys. Spring training. What a wild time. This is, now that I'm back in Jupiter, the last 2 weeks of spring training are notoriously the time where these performances start to matter, but really. So we've seen over the last couple of weeks, guys get reps, right? It's been all about finding timing, getting feel for your pitches, et cetera, et cetera. Now I think is when the position battles really start, and we're going to see more of an evaluation from the coaching staff and how these performances play out. And that's what Ollie Marmol said as much today. But yes, they still have 2 weeks, and that's a lot of time. But now the evaluations start to ramp up, and obviously, guys, as we know, we've talked about it, there are plenty of position battles at stake for the opening day roster.
I want to start with the rotation, if you don't mind, because yesterday I was listening to John Mozeliak. He was on his typical Sunday morning hit with KMOX. And he was asked about the rotation, and he said, hey, there's 2 guys that have entered the mix that we weren't necessarily anticipating going into spring training. And he said Matthew Liberatore is one, Michael McGreevy is the other. I found it strange that they weren't expecting that from McGreevy, but whatever, neither here nor there, I suppose. How do you view the current battle for those last spots in the rotation kind of figuring out?
That is comedy. Well... I think, on all jokes aside, I didn't hear that interview, obviously. I like
that I just reveal news to you every Monday from what John Mozeliak had to say on KMOX. It's my favorite running bit from our show.
I need to start listening to KMOX, really.
No.
After you listen to 101.
We'll do it for you.
See where my loyalty is, though? See where my loyalty is?
That's right.
All right, no. On a real note, I think the Liberatore thing is a little bit more surprising to me, not because of Libby. We've seen what he can do when he's stretched out and has that full arsenal going, but it just seemed like this rotation was pretty set already, clearly, if McGreevy wasn't, on their radar, which again, is a crazy sentiment. But when you're looking at, I think it's really coming down to 4 guys, really, for 2 spots in Steven Matz, Andre Kalante, Michael McGreevy, and now Matthew Liberatore. And this goes back to what we just talked about performances really starting to matter. Now, the Cardinals, part of the reason they started stretching out Libby as a starter was for that depth, but also because they learned last year when they stretched him out that he came into the regular season and had a much better feel for his pitches. This is a guy who likes to throw, he likes to execute, he doesn't take a lot of days off. We saw this when he was used as a reliever. And overall, he felt much better about that kind of runway and that kind of throwing program. So they were going to start him that way no matter what. What they have seen from Matthew Liberatore as a starter this spring is his stuff is playing up more. He looks like a more convicted pitcher. I don't know if it's a confidence booster from what he did in 2024 in that long relief role, or it's just the fact that he does have a really good feel and command for his pitches so far this spring. I mean, he's been downright dominant in all his Great Blue League outings. But this is what they're talking about. Finally, we're starting to see some evidence of the youth movement because Matthew Liberatore is slowly but surely earning his rankings to maybe break into that rotation. Now, again, I think they have a lot of questions about Steven Matz, who is set to throw Thursday, 5 innings. Michael McGreevy's looked really good. Palante's looked good. It was, a little bit of a windy day last year at Roger Dean. We don't usually see that many home runs here. But that, to me, looks like a more competitive spot now for the last two spots in the rotation than any of us really anticipated coming into spring.
So, Katie, how do you think they go about making that decision? Because, and this just might be because the Cardinals have put me in this position, it's hard for me to see this team be willing to say, Steven Matz, you go to the bullpen because we need to create a spot in the rotation for McGreevy or Matthew Liberatore.
I think that would be the logical thing to do, right? If you want to stick to some semblance of a youth movement. And the Cardinals don't really have a veteran presence behind Ryan Helsley in the bullpen. We've talked about this as well extensively. So if you're looking to create more opportunities in the rotation, then yeah, I think flexing Matz to the bullpen would make a lot of sense. But if Matz is having a good spring, there's maybe some desire internally to have a more veteran experienced rotation to ensure the team gets off to a better start. That also factors into it. I mean, when you go back and forth here, I can understand that logic. The Cardinals, despite the mixed messaging from the front office and despite the lack of spending, still maintain that they want to compete, and they feel like starting with as much experience as possible in the rotation will allow for April to go, ideally, as seamlessly as possible. But it's going to be a tough decision, and that's why, the performance evaluations are going to start ramping up over the next 2 weeks, because there seems to be a bunch of guys just all hovering together and no clear front runner in really any position battle, including the rotation.
All right, Katie, we kind of know what the Cardinals lineup is going to be. There might be a couple of things, depending on what happens in center field, that could shift there. But we for the most part, know kind of what that starting nine is going to look like. How are you feeling about the bench? As of today, how would you project the Cardinals bench to look on opening day?
That's like you guys know what I'm trying to figure out today at work, because that bench has a lot of questions. And that pertains to center field. We talk about every week who's going to be in center field, who's going to be the backup there. The Cardinals don't have a true backup shortstop behind Mason Wynn, and that's why you're seeing a lot of guys get a lot of runway in different positions. You think about Michael Hellman, Jose Barrero, Jose Fermin. These are guys that, we wouldn't necessarily think are going to make or break a roster, but the fact that they don't have anyone that can fill in behind Mason Wynn at shortstop means that these guys are getting extra looks. Luken Baker has had a great spring. He's had some of the healthiest swings we've seen so far. The Cardinals didn't have a right-handed bench off the bat last year. As we know, that was a big problem for them in pinch-hit situations. Could Luken Baker fill that role? I mean, he's certainly played up to it to this point, but do they need it with Herrera, Walker, a healthy Arenado, a healthy Contreras, et cetera, et cetera? So these are things that they're trying to figure out, and they're all tied into each other. Again, the big thing for me that I think the Cardinals need to figure out is what their utility situation looks like, and then you can fill in the bench bats from there. But right now it's anyone's guess on who has the leading edge in that category.
One more position battle that I'm curious your thoughts on, Katie, is just the bullpen, because it seems like they've got all of the spots accounted for, but you're looking for guys to kind of emerge into the specific roles. And then Mo on Sunday kind of made it seem like, hey, we could go out to the market and make a free agent signing if we wanted to.
Okay. I think the bullpen, there are some solidified roles, obviously. Ryan Helsley, the closer. Jojo Romero will return to that setup man role. Ryan Fernandez, a question mark for Libby because what we just talked about. But the big competition in the bullpen, I think, is between 6 right-handed relievers: Gordon Graceffo, Nick Anderson, Kyle Leahy, Chris Roycroft, Riley O'Brien, and Rodri Munoz. And those are some arms that I think, again, are all in that same group, and the Cardinals are going to look over the next 2 weeks to see who steps out, who has a standout performance. I would like to see Gordon Graceffo in that bullpen. I think he looked really good this spring. But no one has really jumped out in terms of performance. I know the Cardinals like Munoz because they think he has a big arm. He was a starter for Miami a lot last year, and he's kind of slid under the radar up until recently, and they put him on that list. Nick Anderson, another non-roster invite, could break in there. He would provide some veteran experience. So, yeah, the high leverage roles in the bullpen are pretty much decided, but the bulk of the right-handers that are going to take the reps, that's going to be, I think, the most competitive area of camp because there are so many and so many close together.
All right, Katie, you ready? You want to talk about it?
No, I'm not. But, yeah, let's talk about it.
Katie was a piece up over on The Athletic. You should read it in its entirety over on The Athletic. You can also hear her on Cardinals Territory. She joins us each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Her piece is titled, Yadier Molina talks family, future manager aspirations, and his absence from St. Louis. So you had a conversation with Yadier Molina about all of those things and more. What was your biggest takeaway? Let's start big picture. Your biggest takeaway from your conversation with Yadier Molina?
I think my biggest takeaway with Yadier, with him over the weekend, was just honestly how happy he sounded and how at peace he sounded being a baseball dad. I mean, I know there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of concern, rightfully so, over his absence over the last 18 months. But hearing him talk about how much he's enjoying being with his son, I mean, he and his wife Wanda sold their house from Puerto Rico, moved to Austin, Texas, because it was a better program for Yanu and his as he enters his junior season of high school ball. It's I think we, as in the industry, as fans, whatever your role is, can sometimes forget the importance of family and how much these guys spend time away from them. So the fact that Yachty is having a great time being a dad and helping his kid in high school baseball, I think is fine. But I do think the underlying aspects here are, what does the future look like for the St. Louis Cardinals from a managerial standpoint? Yes, Ollie Marmol's under contract through 2026. We all know that Chaim Bloom is taking over, and there's no guarantee that a new front office keeps their manager regardless of contract status. Now, is that fair to Ollie? Probably not, but it's fair to put out in question. Albert Pujols, there's been stuff written all over. Bob Nightingale of USA Today put out a great story about that. He wants to manage. Yachty has always been candid about wanting to manage. I mean, he was saying that even when he was a player. Said, when my career is done, I'd like to manage in baseball. He's managed the Winter League 3 separate years. He's going to manage Team Puerto Rico again after doing so in the last World Baseball Classic tournament. And I can absolutely see him wanting to manage in the major leagues. What that means for the Cardinals, guys, I don't know. I don't know what it means for any of those players. I mean, Skip Schumacher, you want to talk about him? I know he's with the Rangers right now as a special assistant, but would he like to manage again? I'm sure. So it's not a bad thing to have so many impactful future Cardinals around, but I also don't think that's very fair to even talk about at this point.
It's not fair, but it's the reality of the business, right? Ollie gets it. He understands that. And you had a quote in here. I'm loyal to the people that helped me out and supported me for many years. I feel like I'm part of the city, even if I'm away from them right now. But it's baseball, right? If we decide as a family, if I have a chance to manage, I can manage anywhere. I would manage the Chicago Cubs if they want. Katie, you knew what you were doing when you wrote that wrote that sentence. You heard that from Yachty and were like, okay, well, this story is going to go viral.
Run with it.
Hey, he said it and he laughed. He knew what he was doing too. Right? Look,
that's fair.
There are 30 manager jobs in baseball, so I don't think you can be picky or selective when an organization calls. And I think Yachty just wanted to rile up the fans a little bit, give them a bad time. But no, I think it was just nice to hear from him. I think the fans. That was long overdue to figure out where he was and what he was up to. He certainly sounds like he wants to come back and visit St. Louis. Not going to be here this spring training again, but hopefully, he said, if the timelines work with his family and his kids, he'd like to be back in St. Louis for a couple games this year.
All right, Katie, we'll get you out of here on this, and it's kind of related to this subject, but more big picture-wise. When you think about what it's going to look like with Chaim Bloom, we've already seen them go a little bit away from like the old Cardinal way, right, where everything is promoting from within. You're very insular in that regard. Do you think they're going to want, if they decide not, Ollie, and this, again, you said this is unfair, but do you think they're going to want to look back to their history if you're Chaim Bloom and you're trying to kind of start a new era? That is something that I've been thinking about a little bit as we've gotten these stories on Yachty and on Albert Pujols.
I'm not sure, and I also think it's a fair question. Look, it's a weird situation in its entirety, right? But we also don't really know what Chaim Bloom is looking for as a manager because, from my understanding, Alex Cora was in place before he took over in Boston. So it's hard for me to speculate on what that looks like, but I think it's a fair point. If the Cardinals are trying to modernize their organization in 2026 and Chaim has a different idea of what that looks like, could that weigh into it? Sure, but I really have no idea what he's looking for, if he's even looking for something like that. I think the Cardinals, on their long list of things to figure out, next year's manager is very low on that list.
No doubt. Hey, Katie, we appreciate the time. It was a really good piece. Good to hear from Yachty Ermelina. It sounds like he's doing well with him and his family down there in Austin. All the best to you. Enjoy yourself down there in Jupiter for the next couple of weeks. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys. Talk to you next week.
That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll be back with the Rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
The 101ESPN app is free to download, super easy to use. You can check it out, and it is available to you courtesy of Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can also check us out over on YouTube after the show, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. And Selection Sunday is almost here. Get signed up right now to play in this year's Bracket Madness Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Free to enter. This year's top prize will take home a $250 Amazon gift card and a 101 ESPN prize pack. See the contest rules and sign up to play right now at 101ESPN.com. Bracket Madness is presented by Bud Light. Alex, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give today's show?
8.5. I think you've done a phenomenal job today, buddy. Yeah.
Good show today.
Yeah.
T-Bone, what would you give it?
I would say about 7.5. You know, when you mentioned pornography earlier,
I
it
thought
really
it was
brought
great.
that down.
No, I thought it was a valid.
Oh, you thought that boosted the number?
I thought it was a valid comparison.
I'd say 6.5, 7.
Wow, you guys are
I
down.
can't give everything a great rating, you know? Sometimes you have, like, just good shows. I think it was a good show today. I don't think it was an elite level as like Thursday, Friday. Last week, I thought we had some elite level shows.
Yeah, those are 10s, and you don't take away from 10s. That's why I would give this one an 8.5. I thought it was a solid 8.5.
All right, Alex. The Blues over the weekend took 3 out of the possible 4 points. Saturday's game was spectacular for them. They did not end up getting the 2 points, but I actually found it to be more inspiring than what they did on Friday night against Anaheim, given what they were without Parayko and Fowler in that game. What did you learn about the Blues over the weekend?
That this team is not going to give up, and this team has established a winning culture once again. And I don't know how it's going to fare, and frankly, I don't think it matters, because if this is how they play the rest of the way and you miss the playoffs, this is a successful season in my book. I know you made the moves to be a playoff team, but you also made moves that set yourself up for success next year. And if you're going to play this way for the final 17 games, this consistent style, well, then you're going to set yourself up in the early portion of the season to go on a little bit of a run. So I'll be really curious to see Thursday when the Blues suit up against Pittsburgh. They'll have the same amount of games played as Vancouver, same amount of games played as Utah, and 1 game fewer than the Calgary Flames. So Thursday, you're going to get a really good picture of what this playoff push is going to look like, as the Blues have the easiest schedule the rest of the way.
The news in the NFL has been coming in hot and heavy. They'll certainly have a breakdown of that all afternoon here on 101 ESPN with the Fastlane guys coming in soon. Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100 million with $55 million guaranteed for the Seattle Seahawks. They had previously traded away Geno for a third-round pick. I actually like the deal for them. It's not as much money as I was expecting him to get, especially the guarantees. It's basically a 2-year deal for him with Seattle. What do you guys think? Quick snapshot reaction to the Darnold deal in Seattle.
Great job for him to get that money. I don't understand it for Seattle. Like, you traded away DK Metcalf, you released Tyler Lockett. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish with that money put towards Sam Darnold.
Yeah, they're trying what Tampa Bay did on the Baker deal, but they got rid of all the pieces that Baker had when we got there. So that's why it doesn't make sense to me.
The Jets have signed Justin Fields to a 2-year deal worth $40 million, with 30 of that guaranteed. So it's a 1+ year deal for Justin Fields in New York. My guess is Aaron Rodgers is going to be going to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. That's kind of what the writing on the wall is. My guess is Woody Johnson looked at the overall rating for Justin Fields and said, this guy's got an A potential.
There you go. We'll get into that more deeper, a little bit deeper tomorrow on the show. The Fastlane has their full breakdowns coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Yeah, they got big balls.